Hey guys, kinggath here, and welcome back to the kinggath podcast. Today's guest is somebody that I think most people in the Fallout 4 modders community know, but maybe those of you guys listening who are just mod users may not know. He is currently a member of several big teams, including Sim Settlements. Welcome, WhiteCollarPlayers.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. Really excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks, man. So you recently joined Sim Settlements, I don't know, a couple of months ago. You're helping us out with some quest implementation, but I've had conversations with you, I think, long ago in the Nexus Discord. I think you were also hanging out in there, possibly.
Wow,
or maybe I know you, forever ago, right?
Yeah.
Or I might know you through Scrivener. I'm not sure, but we've been friendly for a long time, and it came up. I don't remember how exactly you came onto the Sim Settlements team. I know we were chatting back and forth about something. At some point when you were working on Barstool Games, I was trying to convince you and Scrivener to do it without F4SE, because I was like, if you guys do it without F4SE, I will put a copy on a plot, and then it can be like a bonus thing for Sim Settlements, but it's just it was too much work to try and make that work without F4SE. So
that is how we got started.
Yeah,
you and I and Scrivener. I don't actually remember exactly. No, I joined the Sim Settlements Discord because I saw that it was a place for authors or for potential mod authors to learn about stuff, and so I joined that, and just to get help with Barstool Games originally, and then you came through the channel at some point and said, well, it'd be really cool if you could do it without F4C, and it could be a plot and all that good stuff. And unfortunately, like you said, we weren't able to make it work with F4C. It's a goal it's a goal, right? Sorry, without. It's a goal that I have in my head to try to do it. But I don't know, maybe you do. I don't know of a workaround for capturing keyboard presses and custom button inputs without F4SE.
So I've dreamed up a way, and I had a conversation with Registrator 2000 about this, and he's got some ideas too, and it's really wonky. So you have to do, here's a trick he gave me, and I have an idea of something else I'm going to do with this, is if you set the player's movement speed down to like 0.001, then when they move, the event for them to move will still fire. So the animation event will still fire, but they won't go anywhere. So you could do that as a trick to get the analog stick. And then I think it's one of the player's rotations, like the X and Y rotation on the player have to do with tell you which way the camera's pointing, and you can use that to infer which way their stick is working. So there's all these hacks you can do to get the input of the analog stick. And then for some of the other ones you can get, you can get jump, because you can detect if the animation event for jump fires, but you don't want the player jumping in the middle of the UI. So there's you gotta, so then you have to, and I don't even know if you can do this with Papyrus or without editing core game files of set their jump height to almost nothing. So then when they jump, it's it doesn't have, you know what I mean? Basically you've got to do all these hacks to redirect all their controls, and then you equip them with an invisible weapon that doesn't have a firing mode, and so there's all these things you can do to capture most of the button inputs. And this is I said, this is a conversation I had with Registrator 2000, so I do not take credit for these ideas. The only ideas I had come up with are, if you guys have seen the tech tree for Sim Settlements, I came up with the idea of using the block and the block button, because it's it's not going to have any negative effects for you to hit it, as a way to toggle through screens and then put away your weapon to put away the screen. That's the best I had dreamt up with. And then Reg came back with this idea of how you could say, you set the player speed down, and then you can calculate these angles. I'm like, holy crap, that's awesome. Would not have thought of that, but
no.
That man is a better modder than all of us. So
yeah, absolutely. I wonder if that same stuff would work because currently the way the game, I don't want to pull the curtain over anybody's eyes here, but the way the game works is that the player is just in a fixed location and their controls are disabled. I guess we'd have to re-enable them and then set all their movement stuff to be super small, because then they would literally just be walking around on the table.
Right.
So that would be, and not the worst part, but one of the funny things about it is, in order to make the cards transition and flow and move, not realistically, but just not not just teleport or suddenly appear in places.
Yeah.
We had to make them like have, I think they're activator records, but they have collisions, so they, like you could kick them around and stuff.
So you have to be real careful with that'll let somebody make a mess. It would allow people to rage quit. They could flip the table when they lose.
Yeah, so literally kick all the cards off the table.
That Barstool Games is really, really cool. That you get to play blackjack in there, and the one I keep. Every time I talk to one of you or Scrivener about it, I always like poke at the idea of Caravan, because I remember spending so many hours playing that in New Vegas. That's the one I want to see, but I recognize that's a pretty complicated game, so
it is. I don't even know how to play it. I'm in the process of learning how to play it. But I actually, and before I got started with SimSettlement stuff, I actually started the source code for it. So there is a file that has the start of it. Getting awesome. In the process. But I was really happy with the way that Barstool Games, the current state of Barstool Games, and I think blackjack is like 90, maybe 98% feature complete. There's some like minor stuff I would change. But so I was good with leaving it, and then for now, like tabling it for now. And Scrivener moved on to other things as well, and he knows significantly more about Papyrus than I do. So he's definitely nice to have around for that sort of stuff. But in the future, I intend to follow through on my promises, and all the lists of games that are on the mod page right now that say, in the future at some point, whenever I'm done with all these other projects, like you mentioned. So maybe a while down the road, but it is something I definitely want to do and want to return to.
I know I end up doing that a lot with my mods. So I only have so much bandwidth, and I tend to function better if I can laser focus on 2 or 3 projects instead of a whole bunch. And that's why, like, anybody who was a fan of salvage beacons, I used to, when I first put that mod out, I had all these people were coming to me with ideas, and like, that's an awesome idea, I'll do that one day, I'll do that, and I never did any of them, and it's just because I got obsessed with other projects. But it's like, one day I'm going to go back and like take all the knowledge I have now and reapply it to that idea, because I still like the mod idea, but it's like, it's nice to go do all these other things, because then you learn a bunch of new stuff so that you can do better when you go back to
exactly. So, I would, definitely other stuff I would way rather. I feel I can relate.
Yeah, I'm thinking you'll know after a year or two of doing of some of the projects you're working on, going back to Barstool Games, you'll just have a lot more to pull from.
Oh, absolutely. And also, it just hit me. Now I figured it out. Prior to me becoming a mod author, I started a YouTube channel, a small one. And if you don't know me from modding and as a listener, then maybe you've heard my name because I made a tutorial that people like to use for getting mods set up for Fallout 4 in New Vegas. So maybe you've heard of me there. But on that YouTube channel, when I started going through Fallout 4 mods, I ran across salvage beacons, and that was the first time I heard your name, was when I found that mod and covered it. And then that's when I started, and then that's when I realized, oh, this mod author also has a YouTube channel. And then I started watching some videos, learned about stuff, and I was like, oh, wait, they say something about a Discord here. And then I think that's eventually how that ball got rolling. Because at the time, I had started. Scrivener is the first mod author who I kind of sort of connected with, because I ran into him in some Discord server somewhere. And I said, hey, I don't know, I'm not a modder. I don't know how feasible this is, but I have source code in C programming. In the C language, I have source code for blackjack. Is that something that is? And I just asked this generally to the chat. Is this something that's easily ported into Fallout 4, or is like how is that like a complex system? I had no idea. Had no clue. Right. And Scrivener heard me say that I had the source code, reached out and said, and then we started PMing, and that was years ago, and we've just been friends ever since. I mean, I would consider him like an actual personal friend at this point. We talk all the time, and we work on these projects, and
Scriv's a great guy. I ran into him in the Nexus Discord, because that's before I released any of my mods. That's where I would hang out to ask questions, and I tried to be as helpful as I could, because it always drove me nuts and I think this is a common thing, everybody feels this way, is when you you have a little community, you hang out, and then like new people show up, they demand their questions to be answered, and then they disappear and they never help.
Yeah.
It always drove me nuts when people did that. Ironically, I've now set up spaces for people to do that because I recognize there's a need for it. Sometimes you just got like if you're, there's some people out there who are introverts, but they get stuck on a project they're working on. They have nobody to ask because they don't have a network. And so like I've never faulted people who come on to like our Discord or our forums and just ask one question and they disappear. I'm like, you know what? I understand, man. Like I used to be in that boat where sometimes I just wanted that. I was like, I just wish I had somebody I could ask. But anyway, Scrivener was somebody that I had good luck with chatting about programming. So he's a good guy. Really like him.
He is. And I don't know, and I wanted to, and I was thrilled when you had him on the show because and we mentioned this maybe I think privately before, but he's one of those mod authors that doesn't like to credit himself for things like a lot of big major projects out there that people use and have heard of. He's on the back end of probably a lot of them. Mm-hmm. And yeah, he doesn't like to put his name on anything. And I basically had to just twist his arm until he agreed to letting me put his name as a co-author on Barstool Games. And co-author's a loose term. I mean, he basically did all of the back end programming for it. I just got the ball rolling and then did all the NPC and world implementation, but he did the back end system. And so, I mean, I to this day would argue that Barstool Games would not exist without him at all. So I was appreciative of you giving him the recognition that he definitely deserves.
Oh, you know what? He's one of many people that I think are in that boat. But yeah, he definitely deserves it. Yeah. Anybody who's a programmer, if you looked at his code, which he keeps, I think he keeps it all up on GitHub. It's open source. Mm-hmm. Or I'm sorry, there's a new term we're supposed to use in programming. It's source available. There's a big war going on over the terms open source in the coding community. Because I don't know the details. I just know it came up on Workshop Framework, and then I started reading into it, and I was like, oh, okay, I see what's going on here. It's a problem with Amazon is basically taking advantage of a lot of the open licensing and using it, and basically taking things like MongoDB and ElasticDB, and basically taking what's supposed to be commercial free or open license software, and they're selling it as a software as a service because technically they're selling you access to their hardware, and so now there's this big problem in the programming community about what we should do.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I kind of do like the idea of just source available, but yeah, it does suck when big giant corporations who can just kind of take control over of software because they just have the weight behind them and the money. It does kind of suck when they get in there and mess with things like that. But yeah, that's a whole different podcast.
Not this show.
But the point I was getting at there was that Scrivener's stuff is up there, and anybody who looks at it, it's very, very beautiful, and it's so easy to read. It's very, very, it's factored out almost to perfection. Maybe sometimes him and I talked about it on the podcast he was on about how sometimes he takes it too far, and I know that feeling where you just want to keep.
He does.
You want to keep taking it out to every possible level of. I can't think. Why am I blanking on the
abstracting?
Phrase? Abstraction. Thank you. I kept saying the wrong term. Abstracting it out so far, and it's very nice to look at. And then when he had told me he learned to program in Papyrus, I was like, what? That's nuts.
Yeah. I don't. I have no idea. I don't get it.
Well, that's the reason it's shocking that he makes beautiful code while having learned in Papyrus. Because if you learned from Bethesda, their code is not pretty. Ooh, it is not pretty.
No, I love I mean, this, but a lot of users out there don't. But those random notes that they throw in, especially on fragments and stuff, just the goofy notes and things like that about random stuff that you have no idea, and they reference sometimes people's initials. They're like, checked by whatever.
Well,
it's always interesting.
Bethesda stuff, the way they work is very good for the way they run their company, because they expect at least they've gotten used to their employees being around for a long time, so they tend to allow everybody to do some scripting. And so you can see these wildly different quality levels in different scripts, and some are massively complex, and then others are what? Why did they even run that? I don't understand.
Yeah, exactly.
And I've watched every ounce of documentary I can on their process, and essentially they just basically let anybody who's a little interested in programming, they'll let them do their own Papyrus scripting, and just like it's a great way to learn and get better. So
yeah, that's what Scrivener's theory about why fragments exist is because he this is his phrasing, and I say this lovingly because I know a lot of level designers out there, so I don't want them to take offense to this, but because you guys are awesome. But he says fragments are just for level designers who want to program. So, which
I would say it's for level designers who don't want to program. It's like, here's the bare minimum. Like, you keep screwing up the script name field, so here you go. You can write the bare minimum. That's what my assumption is. But they end up being pretty convenient. Like, for some things, they're like for the dialogue topics, they're invaluable. Can't really get away from them. But yeah, they do seem real wonky sometimes.
Yeah, he does not like them. He sort of, when I was learning I learned Papyrus, everything that I know about Papyrus from Scrivener pretty much.
Okay. And
so he is in his school of teaching. He was like, you never use a fragment ever. There's no reason to. They're bad. Never use them. And yeah, it was funny. But
I agree with him that they suck, and in fact, you've seen the workflow I have for doing quests. I ask everybody not to use them unless they have to, but there are certain parts you have no choice. It's just that the order the game engine handles things, it's not possible to not use them. For example, if you want to start the camera during a dialogue sequence that's not a player choice driven one, you have no choice but to put it in the dialogue fragment, otherwise it won't run in time. So there are certain ones where you can't do it, or like in a holotape, if you want a script to run, it's got to be a fragment. Sorry.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
In a holotape?
Well, if you want, in the terminal entries. So if you want each terminal entry to do something, you could get around it in the sense of having it like just start up the first run could start up stuff in a quest, but it all has to, every one of those entries that you want to run in a terminal. So if you have all those different entries, each of those is a fragment. There's really no way around it.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm convinced that that fragment system is. I think it could have been done better, but like in the sense of how it stores the fragments, as opposed, because you know how it stores the fragments, it just kind of puts them in. I forget the exact method, but it doesn't put them in like a proper namespace and all that good stuff.
Right.
So. That makes it a little bit
the namespacing is that's what gets me and for anybody listening who's not a programmer and whose eyes are glazing over, namespacing is effectively means a folder, and that like all the files end up just in one bucket folder of all your mods mixed together plus the vanilla stuff. It's a disaster. Like it's amazing we don't get. I mean, we do have a lot of this of like people accidentally releasing vanilla files in their mods because of this.
That was huge. I mean, you know this as well, but when I first found out that, like if you use the CK to pack your archives or whatever, especially if you're going to upload to console, and it wants to automatically overwrite any of the scripts that you like reference or anything, the vanilla ones, like, I mean, even as far as like object reference script and all that, it's like, I mean, if you didn't know what you were doing, you could mess stuff up.
Well, it was real bad because Bethesda altered object reference was the real bad one, so that one would end up included in pretty much everybody's mod. And right before Nuka World came out, the patch Bethesda put out for Fallout had a new version of object reference, so there were tons of mods that just broke Nuka World, and it turned out that I was tapping into some of those for salvage beacons. That's how I found out about this, because it was breaking salvage beacons as well. So I ended up on this hunt for a couple of months where I was like when people would report problems with this particular issue in salvage beacons, they would report it to me, and I would ask them for their mod list, and I would go through and cross-reference it and try and figure out and send notes to everybody. I spent a lot of time.
How did you eventually figure that out? Because it doesn't like, you wouldn't just look at the plugins and be like, oh, there's a mod conflict. That's not
right. No, I think it was just like luck, like looking at. I finally got sick of dealing with like, why is this mod? There was one popular mod that was having the problem. I was like, there's got to be a reason, and then so I just like looked into their BA2, and I was like, oh, wait a second, why is this file in here? And then I used the decompiler and found out that one of the functions was missing, and then and it was like, okay, well that's why that doesn't work if this entire function's gone. So
that is brutal.
Yeah, was lucky that I even found it. I feel like that's been happening a lot. I keep getting lucky that I'm finding out all these problems with the Fallout 4 engine.
Hey,
like the script data limit, total accident that we discovered that, or the power grid failure, like total accident. You know,
that's an interesting one. I heard you talk about that.
Yeah, that one was a real pain in the butt, and it's unfortunate that the one guy who knows how to fix it kind of goes in fits and starts of modding Fallout 4, like Registrator. He'll mod for a couple of weeks, and then he disappears again, and then he'll come back. And I happened to find that bug right about one of the times when he was coming back, and so he was able to fix it in like 10 minutes, as he does, which is annoying as hell. I've been attacking this bug for months and researching it, and you take a look at the problem in a few minutes and have it solved.
It's a good thing and a bad thing, right? Because it gets your work, it gets that problem fixed for you, but it makes you feel bad about yourself.
Yeah, it makes you feel like a bad programmer. I'm so bad at. So I actually learned to program in C, like original C.
Oh.
And then I picked up
Comrade.
Then I picked up C++ at one point, and then I kind of got off of that because I started making money doing web programming, and I fell off of it. And then now it's now you got to learn C#, and C++ I know is still useful, but it's been so long since I've used it, and that's the best way to do a lot of the stuff like he was doing. So like anything with F4SE, you want to code DLLs in. I think it's in C++. I could be wrong on that. It might maybe it is C#.
I believe that's correct.
Yeah,
I've been looking into some jobs like that sort of thing, and pretty much the baseline is C, and then kind of the rest of the C++ and C# stuff is just like the additional for computer programming stuff. So I'm assuming that's why C++ is on there.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'm afraid to open the Pandora's box of F4SE. Like it seems like once you have that power, you can never go back.
Because it's one of those things where I learned some of the functions and stuff, and I get to the point where sometimes I'm telling people, I was like, oh, well, you can use this XYZ function to handle what you want to do, and they're like, oh, but that's F4C. I was like, oh, I didn't even realize. I've just been kind of used to it because I started out with that stuff with Barstool Games, so I've got to retrain my brain on what I can use and what I can't use.
Yeah, it gets disappointing sometimes too because all of the functions are listed on the creation kit site, even the F4SE ones.
Right.
So sometimes you find one like, oh, I never heard of that one. That's exactly what I need, and then you click it and it's like, oh, F4SE.
Exactly. And for you, it is.
No, well, F4SE is awesome. Like I will never not play with it, but I get why, but I refuse to program for it. Not only because of Xbox players, but there are a lot of PC players who hate it too because it's frustrating. First of all, because of Creation Club, because it breaks it every time there's a new update.
I have a solution for that.
There are solutions available for it, but I think it still requires commitment to use it. It requires you to. It just requires extra steps. Like not everybody on PC needs to even go through a mod manager. Now you can do it right in the game. So there's a way to mod easy mode. And one of the things that has come up in the Patreon supporters Discord recently, we had a big conversation about mod packs and about how occasionally, even as a longtime mod player where you understand all the load order stuff, you use F4SE, you use all these cool mods, occasionally you just want to break. You're just like, you know what, I want to be able to just click the game and start playing, and that's where mod packs could be awesome because somebody else could do all the heavy lifting. And F4SE makes that, it's like one of those sorts of things where it's just like one extra potential pitfall thing you got to watch out for and manage, and it's not just plug and play. And occasionally, we want our gaming to be easy, and so it's so there are a lot of PC players who still won't use F4SE even though it's readily available.
You're kinggath, you got to be careful. You're raising the bar too high for us mod authors here. You get your I know your work background. You've mentioned it before, but when you start making it too easy for the players to make use of all these free, mini DLCs, we'll call them, and
that's
tools
what they're
like
feeling
that.
like now.
Yeah, absolutely. Sims Elements is a prime example of one. And when you're making it so that we have to put more work into giving people stuff for free, I don't know. You're going to start weeding out the mod authors now. You may increase the player count, but people are going to be like, I don't want to have to put all this refinement into my mod just so I can give it to some jerk who has no idea what he's doing.
Yeah, and that's like, you joke about that, but that's actually a legit thing that happens, is that as certain people raise the bar, then everybody else has to kind of meet those standards because everybody else that kind of expects them. And I don't think I'm the first one to do that. I think there are others. Like I said, Reg2K has always
absolutely.
been my role, has been like the guy I look up to as far as polish and stuff, because his stuff blows me away. Like he actually puts it into the UI. Like it's like, all right, well that's taking it to 11, because that's very difficult to do. But yeah, I would love making things simple, but that comes from my web background, is know, websites and anything web related, because I tend to do more intranet stuff in my career. So it's web stuff. It's like hosted in a way. It's done in a web browser. It's facing employees, but even the employees of most of the companies I work with are not tech savvy. So everything has to be very self-explanatory, and can only go. We follow the rules of like nothing more than 3 clicks deep. And so like a lot of that stuff is just ingrained into me. So then I just end up doing that with my mods too, or I try to as much as possible within the creation kit. So that's just like years of UX bash like crammed into my head that I can't let go of, because I agree with them. I think it should be easy to use for everybody. Otherwise, I don't know, you're kind of wasting people's time otherwise. So
that's true. You don't want to, you definitely, and you've mentioned this as well, you definitely don't want to have your work and your mod be the reason that people, lose time, and, this is their leisure time, this is their free time. You don't want your stuff to be the reason that they have to stop enjoying it or whatever else, if your mod causes a problem or if it's too hard and stuff like that. And I mean, I get that. Well,
I think long term,
seeing both sides of the coin.
I think it's and I also see the pressure it puts on people who are designing mods and don't want to necessarily put that level of polish in. But I think that there's room there if you're not willing to do that. Somebody else is. It's kind of the capitalist model, that there's always somebody else behind you who is willing to put in that work, and if they are, you should just get out of the way and let them do it. Like
or lucky enough to work from home.
Right, who can put in more hours than they should in modding. So I think that there are, and it kind of happens. I think you see it. I've noticed it a lot in Fallout 4. I'm sure I never got involved enough in the Skyrim modding scene to really see how it happened there. But you can see in Fallout 4 that there are mods that were released in the first year that the mod authors have long moved on, and now similar mods have started to kind of pop up and replace them. And it's just because the person's willing to be active or to take advantage of more features, or they know there's almost kind of a meta game in modding of like, what are the popular mods, and then does your mod support those, and if it does, then it's going to be more successful. There's kind of that goes on in the modding community, which is interesting. So so if you want to keep your mod used and relevant, you almost have to keep abreast with the metagame, and you have to be willing to. There's a lot that goes into being a mod author if your goal is to keep a player base around. Like, I don't think that that's everybody's goal. I'm just a weirdo. I enjoy the aspect of knowing people are actually playing the thing I'm spending all my time on. So I try and put a lot of effort into. I don't know if I'm succeeding or not. I mean, we do have a good player base, but I don't know that. I'm sure we also bleed a lot of players too, because there are things in the mod that are still rough, or bugs that are still there that people probably get frustrated even with my stuff and bail out on.
So I'm just gonna, because you won't say it unless someone asks you, or you won't, unless someone pries it from you. You aren't gonna say it. Remind me again. I think Sim Settlements is number 1, number 2 most downloaded mod on Xbox. Probably all of Fallout 4.
Oh, on Xbox, I have no idea. I know we're usually in the top 10 on Nexus as far as. I never look at the download count, except for recently when we hit the big milestone, because it came up. I don't remember how it came up, but somebody was asking me how many downloads we had. And I'm like, I don't know, I haven't calculated that. And when we looked up, I was like, holy crap. But
I did the research.
Oh, you've got the numbers now. I was going to say, because I know that we're usually in the top number. What I like to look at is number of endorsements over the latest 2-week period, because when people are giving that thumbs up, it means they're having a good time with the mods. So if the mods that are in the top of that, to me, are the ones that I pay attention to, because that's how I download my mods when I'm coming back to a game.
Not those exact numbers. The research that I did it's not even a recent research. I did this, I don't know when I did this. I think I did it before I even started on doing quest stuff with you. But when I ran the numbers then, and I think it was actually just the Xbox numbers, I believe, if I remember, it was a while ago, so I believe I'm remembering correctly, it was just the Xbox numbers. I think the download count, and what I did was I took the download count and compared it to the populations of cities in the U.S.
Wow,
and yeah, it's analysis. better part of, well, just population census data versus yours. And I looked at it, I was like, yeah, it's the better part of like most of these big cities in metropolitan areas. Like my hometown isn't exactly a big one, but it was like, oh, okay, so it's like everybody in my town all playing Sim Settlements. That seems a little high.
It would be really cool. I wish we could get, and I know they'd have to come up with some way to avoid privacy issues with it, but it would be really cool if Bethesda would give us some like user stats as far as like active users, because they can tell how many people are still using mods actively versus just downloads. It would be really interesting to see, what are
you think they can?
I think they have that capability.
Oh, because the load
because
orders, maybe?
I think that Steam sends them back data. I think they have a ton of active user data, at least on Fallout 4 and Skyrim Special Edition. They probably don't have it on the older games, but I would bet because of Steam reporting. Like I think that's one of the benefits Steam provides is they give the company's analytics to work from, which is why I think that I think that's how Bethesda knew that 76 was going to be the right play. Even though those I don't know where you stand on that. I think I've been pretty open about my opinion that I'm no longer a fan. I tried to get into it and it just didn't do it for me. But I
was never a fan.
Never.
I tried. I did. I gave it a fair shot, like you did.
Yeah.
I gave it a fair shake. Didn't work out.
And it's one of those things that I get that there are a lot of players on it, and I think Bethesda knew that there would be a player base for it because they could see how many people still are playing Fallout all the time. Not just sales, just they can probably. I bet they get to see how many hours per week everybody puts in and stuff. Maybe not on an individual user basis, but they probably get like a stat report they can look at in their side of Steam. Right. So it would be interesting if they would share some of that with us to where we could see, because that could be inspiring for some people. It could probably also turn some mod authors away. You know what I mean? Like, can you imagine if it turned out that the number of people who keep playing Sim Settlements and there's only like 10 people a week still playing, and we're like, we've got this massive team putting in hundreds of hours a weekend and there's only 10 people playing, that could be a pretty bad game deal breaker. We'd be like, oh God, what are we doing?
I could see you coming back and being like, hey guys, so I got some news.
It's like it turns out there are more of us working on this than people playing the mod. But I think for a lot of people it would be encouraging if they saw the numbers of people. If they saw that there were a good number of people using their mod every day, it would be exciting.
I agree. And you said, and that's why one of the reasons I liked my comparison that I did with the Sim Settlements download count versus like the cities and stuff was because in a very recent podcast, did I lose you? No. In a very recent podcast, you interviewed, I'm going to forget the name, but the YouTuber and
Ricky Summer?
Former editor. Yes. Yeah. Ricky. I knew it started with an R. You interviewed and you talked about how if you can imagine your audience as like a physical space.
Yeah.
That's significant. I mean, the visualization there helps a lot. And yeah, let's just imagine, what was it? 5 million was the last milestone? 5 million people.
Right. Yeah, it's like, that's nuts. Yeah, that's like, I don't think anyone can imagine what that looks like in real life. Because even if you look at like the biggest venues or, you look at something like the big like marches on Washington and stuff, and you're talking of tens of thousands of people, and it covers just massive space as far as the eye can see. So then, like magnifying that up to millions is just it's
the metropolitan area of Dallas, Texas, is 1.3 million. So only 5 Dallases. How many people
live in L.A.? I think that's because I think New York has like 11 or something, and that's the biggest city in the U.S. What does LA have? Yeah, sounds like you're ready to Googlebot right now.
I was trying not to because I have an annoyingly loud keyboard. Oh, you're a million people more than Los Angeles.
Yeah, see, that's crazy.
4 million.
Nuts. All right, well, I don't want to get stuck on that. People are probably sick of hearing that. It's old news.
They don't hear it.
We'll talk again about it when we get to 10 million. When we get up to the size of New York City, then we'll hype it up again. We'll talk again.
You're too modest for your own good. Your name's, you don't have to be modest. Your name's in the podcast show here.
That's true. That's as far as I can take it. I gotta have some honesty beyond that. So let's talk about some other teams you're involved with, because you are one of the most connected people I know in the Fallout 4 community, because you've worked with all of the bigger teams, so you then end up having contacts in all these other teams, so you just know like everybody. Like usually lately you've been the person I go to like, hey, do you know this person? And the answer is always yes. But can you tell me, what is it? So first of all, are you cool talking about that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'll talk about as much as I can.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'm sure there's some stuff you don't want to reveal. I'm not going to ask about specifics of maybe the details, but let's go over some of the teams you're on. So right now, I know you've been involved with Cascadia,
still am,
with Miami, and I believe Fallout 4 New Vegas. Is that all accurate?
Yes, Fallout 4 New Vegas by extension with Scrivener, because Barstool Games is will be incorporated into Fallout 4 New Vegas.
Cool.
And so Scrivener and I have a vested interest in fleshing that out so that they can use those mini games. I mean, they're already going to use blackjack for what they can in the casinos, but obviously the more we get done for them, the better. And the same thing started out with Cascadia. Cascadia started out because the project lead, former project lead, reached out to me and saw the work that I had done on Barstool Games and actually saw it get created, and said, we'd love to bring you on the team because we want these mini games in our mod. And of course, I mean, they could have easily all of the stuff on the Nexus, everything, GitHub, all that, it's all open. You can go, our permissions are wide open. So they could have just taken it and put it in their mod. I even have a tutorial for how to incorporate it into a mod. And so, but instead they wanted to bring me on so that I could more or less oversee the implementation of those mini games into their systems.
Okay.
But that eventually turned into me just doing general implementation for them.
Okay.
And then Miami, they didn't reach out to me. I instead reached out to them after some of their popular trailers and stuff and said, hey, I have this. If you want it, you're more than welcome to use it. Just like if you want this, it's available, because they had shown some stuff about like some casinos, I think, were in some of the backgrounds of the trailers or whatever. Something jogged my mind to let them know that I have this. And I said, if you want it, I'm more than happy. Like, it's wide open. You can take it, use it however you want. And they were interested until they found out that it requires F4C. Miami, as of the current roadmap, is not planning on using the script extender.
Oh, that's exciting.
It is, and it isn't, for a couple of reasons, but I'm not going to get into that.
Okay.
But yeah, they're currently not planning on using the script extender, and that's already caused some hiccups and road bumps that we've worked over.
Okay.
But anyway, so they're not planning on using it, which means that pretty much kind of the X-nay on having the mini games in there.
Yeah.
Unless I magically figure out how to get that to work without the script extender. But then they were interested in having me on as a regular just implementer, quest implementation, stuff like that, a lot like what I do for you.
Yeah.
And so they brought me on there, and I'm currently working on a back-end system for them at the moment.
Oh man. So I guess the first question that jumps to mind is, how do you manage your time to juggle between 3 projects of that scale? Because like I can give you unlimited stuff to do, you know that, and I imagine the others could say the same. So obviously none of us has a monopoly on your time. You're a free agent and do what you want. But I'm just curious, like personally, what works for you to balance your time out so that you feel like you're making progress on all the projects that you have taken on. Not to mention your own personal projects.
Right. Well, for starters, no personal projects. That'll help. But I'm finishing up university college, undergrad. And so and I'm in an engineering program, which tends to take up a bit of time. Even now during the summer, I have some classes and things. That does take up a lot of time. I'm also working just a 40-hour week, typical, 8 to 5, 9 to 5, whatever it is. Just to work I work for an engineering firm as an intern, so to pay the bills, and then pretty much the rest I try to devote to these projects. And what I end up doing is it hasn't been working, not because of the team of these other teams' faults or anything, but because my brain doesn't really like to do it.
Okay.
I've been trying to devote one day, like one afternoon when I get off work or I'm done with homework, try to devote that afternoon to working on Miami or working on Cascadia or working on some settlements. And the one afternoon thing seems like a good idea, but it didn't really allow me to make progress at a fast enough pace that I was comfortable with delivering to Sim Settlements, to Miami, to these other teams. So I've started just kind of sprinkling in everything in my free time. So I'll do some part of this, some part of that, make sure I'm at least keeping so nothing stagnates. I try to keep the ball rolling on everything,
Sure.
even if it's, instead of push a ball one day and then the next ball, and so that one ball has to sit every day, or two balls, I guess, have to sit every day. I just kind of push each one a little bit every day.
Oh, interesting. So that,
and I don't know if that's a better plan or not, but I think hopefully you're at least happy with my progress. Maybe.
I mean, like I could always ask for more, but I tend to just be kind of a, I let people on the team manage themselves. Like when we get down to crunch time, I can be a taskmaster, but most of the time I'm just kind of like, hey guys, here's the tasks we got to do, and like the faster you do them, the faster we can get stuff out to people, and that tends to be how I operate on a management scale. I prefer to just bring people on who are self-motivated and can manage their own time, because I find it kind of productive to try and be a micromanager.
Right.
I assume everybody puts in the time that they have available that they're excited to do, and all I can do is try and instill excitement, and that's my job as a manager. That's how I kind of approach things on that. But what I was getting at with this, asking you, because I have the same issue of managing my own time, because I not only have the next expansion going, but I've also run the live team for Sim Settlements for our post-launch content for the previous expansion. And even just juggling those two projects can be a challenge to make sure I put the appropriate amount of time in them. But then I'm also operating the YouTube channel, trying to keep this podcast going, my tutorial series. So I have a lot of pans on the stove, I guess you would say.
You have a CVS receipt amount of things. That's
oh, the CVS receipts are hilarious. I get really angry at those. That's so funny you bring those up. Because they've toned them down a little bit, but I think it was 2 years ago or a year ago, that's when they really blew up for a little while. And I would get angry, and I would just, as soon as it got to the bottom of my total, I would rip it off and leave the rest of it there. Like it was my response to them. CVS receipts.
Yeah, so I think me and a lot of other people on the Sim Settlements team have just come to the conclusion that you may be either a clone or a synth. I'm going with synth. I'm leaning towards synth.
That's because
you have all these like human memories. Yes, and you have like human memories. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe someone pre-programmed these memories in, because I did the rough back of the CVS receipt calculation, and I just don't think there's enough time. I will say, in my time management, the thing that I've chosen to take time away from in order to focus on modding is the YouTube channel, where I tried to do YouTuber modder stuff.
Okay.
And I found that I think even the viewers of that channel would prefer me to spend time working on these mod projects. So that's what I've chosen to pull time off of in order to be sure I do work on these mod projects and stuff like that.
I had to do the same. Like the only reason I can do all the YouTube stuff I do is because I'm fortunate enough to have people willing to do the editing. So like shout out to Luke and Galdavant, who are willing to put in the time to do a lot of the editing. Is that, like, for example, some of it right now I'm doing, because Galdavant, he's been handling things like the podcast and stuff like that, but he's having massive internet issues, so I've been doing those myself.
Oh, no.
But in general, like, for example, like, let's say we do a podcast for 2 hours. That means it's 2 hours and that's it. Whereas in reality, it probably takes like 3.5 hours, because there's a lot of time to set up all, to pair up the audio tracks from each of our sides, pair up our Discord icons, collect some background footage from the game, and then put it all together and render it. Like, it probably takes another 1.5 hours to do all that. I can shave that off if I have help. And same with like the Let's Play. Like, it takes me, the Let's Plays are 40 minutes, probably takes me 2 to 3 hours to record everything for them, and then probably another 2 to 3 hours to edit it, maybe more. Luke will probably call me out in the comments if I'm wrong on that. And he should, because he deserves all the props for that, because his work is fantastic. The series is really fun. But like, the time gets cut in half by having people help with that. So like, that's the only reason I can keep doing it.
That's good.
And I think it's the same thing with like even like all these projects. It looks like I'm doing more than I am, and I actually feel bad, and I'm trying to do better about giving other people some of the spotlight.
I think you do a fantastic job of that.
I think I can always do more. I think there's always more we can do to make sure that other people get credit for their work. So like this podcast started as that. It was a way for me to get other people on the team in front of the fans of the mod so that they could, hear these people talking about, their passions and directions in game development. And then like the plaques in the game where you can view who made it.
I love that.
That was like that was a deal breaker for me. I wasn't going to release the mod unless I could get that work, or I wasn't going to release the builder's toolkit unless I could get that working, because I really wanted people who put their effort in to be able to get credit for it. Because
who made the model? Oh no, that's a default.
That's a default model. Yeah, I just found a way to, and then fortunately there's a font in the game that looks like somebody scratched it in with a nail, and so you put that white color of that against the plaques, and it looks kind of like somebody scratched the plaque in, which is pretty sweet.
I love it.
Yeah, so that's I've been trying to think of ways to give more credit, and like Wanamingo, who is he's like you, he's like one of those connected guys that's involved in every project, but his name's not on a ton of projects. Recently asked me about that, about like how can we give more credit to the team because they deserve it for all the work they're doing. And and I've been trying to like name drop people whenever I can, and especially in the Let's Play and stuff like that, just because I mean everybody deserves some credit for this stuff, because it's not me. It's like my name's on the channel, my name's on this podcast, but in reality the reason I can do all these projects is because there's all these people supporting me and helping out with this stuff. So
well, and these people that are supporting you and helping you wouldn't do it if they didn't think that it was a worthwhile cause to support. I'm sure you realize that.
Yeah, I'm trying to do good by everybody in that regard of like making sure we're putting out good stuff, and it's all actually getting released, because there's always the fear of that. Like that's something else that that would be interesting to talk about, and I know it's probably a sticky or could be a weird subject. Is there's always the fear when you work on a big project that the stuff you do never sees the light of day.
That is with with all of these mod projects. Yeah. The not so much New Vegas, because they are really cool about releasing stuff kind of patchwork, like they kind of if they finish a good asset, like some of the weapons and ranger armor and stuff like that, they can release that piecemeal,
which I love that they do that. That is so awesome.
Right.
That's the closest.
That's awesome.
That team's the closest doing to the way I develop, which is like, let's just get lots of content out there. Like we'll get it all put together at the end.
Yeah, and understandably, in my opinion, Cascadia and Miami aren't doing that, mostly because releasing some of the stuff that they're creating asset-wise specifically you wouldn't really want that for Fallout 4. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense.
Sure.
And things like, and you can't release like they wouldn't release like a partially completed world space or
right.
interior cells,
and then that makes it so then they can't even do they can't do like part of their story because it requires the entire world space. Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the biggest fear that I have working on these projects is, and maybe a little bit of a peek behind the curtain. No one's going to get mad at me though. There's in these development Discord channels for these projects, we're always talking, collaborating, sharing stuff, and that includes showing off assets and stuff people are doing, and there are some just amazing assets. There's everything from custom music to custom models, textures, animations. I mean, just some amazing stuff. And my biggest concern is that these incredible creations may never actually see the light of day. I mean, it's hopefully a small chance, but there's that possibility that just some absolutely amazing work may never make it to daylight. I mean, incredible stuff. I can't talk about specifics, but
well, I think the stuff
I just want y'all to know it's incredible.
I think both of those teams have been good about marketing themselves. So I think once they have enough good stuff like that, they'll put it out there in a trailer or something, like some of the stuff, some of it anyway, because you don't want to leak. You want to save a few surprises for the players for that moment in the game to be revealed. But
exactly,
yeah.
But even still though, it's great about putting it into a trailer and all that, but that's not the same thing as having it in your game. That's not the same thing as having that custom music that people like compose and sing, and then these animations and these 3D models and textures, and just it's a fear. It's a very real fear.
Yeah.
and that's why.
And to clarify, so that nobody suddenly thinks that he's got some that you've got some inside information. This is just like every big mod project for every game ever.
Oh, absolutely.
Is that they're even the team leads. Like even I have this fear about each of our expansions. I'm like, oh God, are we going to be able to pull this off? Like there's always a little bit of that fear there because it's so many moving parts and so many volunteers. That like it's hard to know, how long is it gonna, and then it's like, if you take too long, then people burn out, blah blah blah. There's so many fears. This is just normal. Like this isn't like a movie production where you get contracts and everybody's got a paycheck and it's gonna happen. No. This is you're just like it's just a ragtag group of people with an idea and you just hope it works. There's a lot of things you can mitigate and help to make sure things get released, but at the end of the day, there is kind of, I think that's normal and healthy to have a little bit of fear that the stuff's not going to get released.
So and fortunately, I think you probably can share in this opinion. Fortunately, Fallout 76 wasn't the game-changing game that some of us may have feared it was going to be.
That is something I was going to ask. Because in fact, one of my I'm working on getting some of the leads from Cascadia and Miami on the podcast to talk to them about stuff like that. But like they're literally, so when. For the Fallout 76, when the commercial came out, when they put out what was that? They did that 24-hour countdown on Twitch, and then they did the teaser.
Yeah.
And we were all like, "Oh God, what is this? Is this just a normal Fallout in West Virginia? Is this going to be, the new Vegas of this generation?" We were all hyped and excited, but nervous. So we had like a little viewing party on Discord. For the reveal at E3, and I remember saying I think I said it to you actually, of like, man, I am so afraid that this is going to derail our audience because like in my head, I looked at it like Todd Howard's on record saying Fallout 4 wasn't close enough. I would love to release games like in a week. And I'm like, oh God, what if they finally are doing that? Then all of a sudden, all this work we've been doing is for naught. Now instead, 76 is like, oh, well, based on their current timeline, their next Elder Scrolls game will be 10 years after Skyrim, which means Fallout 4 came out, 2015? So we've got till 2025? Okay, I can do a lot of expansions in that time.
We got time.
Yeah.
Exactly. I remember the former project lead for Cascadia at the time, he was project lead at the time, when that 24-hour live stream went up for this new Fallout announcement, it started out, wasn't really sure what it was going to be.
Yeah.
He stayed for the whole thing. He sat in the watch party channel on the Discord for Cascadia, and for the development side, he sat in the watch party channel, and him and another level design lead, they stayed up. They watched the whole thing. They just sat there, and so I just pop in and check. I'll be like, "You guys okay?"
Because it could have been like countdown to their doom. It was like, did we just waste 3 years? Yeah.
But it was that, and again, you probably felt this too. It was that balance of like, oh my gosh, did we just waste a ton of people's time, energy, and stuff? And then also, but this could be a new Fallout game.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
this is what I want. New Vegas 2, well, then that's fun. So.
Yeah. It was tense and exciting, and it was crazy. It was just crazy. The team was all in there and stuff, and yeah.
The nice thing, the other thing was, is if it was going to be a New Vegas type of thing, we probably all could have ported our mods forward.
Hopefully,
I would presume so. Like I think some of the issues would be things like if we, those of us who I don't think Cascadia is doing this, but I'm pretty sure. Well, I know we are, and I think Miami is as well. And I don't know if this is, you don't have to answer this if it's like something they haven't discussed or not, of the integrating with the player voice, which that would have been obviously a problem porting over, but because I think Cascadia is doing they're using the extended dialogue interface, and it's all just you just read the player side, which is way smart for a new world space mod, because it's just so restrictive to use the player voice. But yeah, obviously that would have been a train wreck in porting forward. But like I bet we could take most of the code for Sim Settlements and port it forward to the next game without much issue. So
well, it's one of those things that people don't really give enough credit. Not credit, but it's just kind of one of those things to think about, that it's kind of taken for granted how easily stuff can be ported from Fallout 3 to New Vegas. But what people often kind of maybe forget to realize is that Fallout 3 and New Vegas were basically made by two different people, like groups of people.
Yeah.
And so to see that those two, that like stuff so easily ports over, is pretty impressive. I would think. I mean, I don't.
Well, I know that if it depends on how you write your code for a lot of it. So, like, I know, for example, Chesco was able to port forward a lot of the code from his camp mod in Skyrim. Was able to port it forward directly into Fallout 4 because he just, he learned over several games how to code in an abstract enough way that he could do that. Like, I know for a fact that there's no way Sim Settlements would port forward, but the code, like the code I've written for some of the code I've written for Workshop Framework and Workshop Plus, some of it is rewrites of the vanilla scripts. Obviously, that can't forward, but the rest of it is abstracted enough to where I could easily port it to another game because I've learned my lesson of like, hey, eventually we're gonna have to go to a new game, and I'm not gonna want to rewrite all this code. And so,
well, hopefully that game has a settlement system.
Yeah, well, I think with the success of it with Fallout 4, I don't think that's ever not going to be a thing in a Bethesda game anymore. Maybe not directly a settlement system, but some sort of base building mechanic. Yeah, I think that to me is one of those important features of the sandbox genre now, and all of Bethesda's games are just sandbox RPGs. I think that having some sort of base building of some sort, I think, is always going to be an important mechanic. I think people like it too much.
Okay.
It's a nice thing that it's one of those things where if you don't do it at engine level right in the game, it's really wonky to mod in.
Yes.
So I anticipate it being a feature of Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6. I assume there's going to be some form of it, whether it be, in Starfield you're building a space station, or in Elder Scrolls you're building a hold, or maybe you just build, an interior cell, whatever it is. I assume there's always going to be some sort of base building. That's my assumption. It just seems to be to fit nicely within the genre.
Have you tried any of the base building mods for Skyrim or New Vegas?
I have not, but that would be interesting. It would be interesting to do. But I have seen videos of them and how like they're very impressive for being a mod but they're nowhere near as smooth looking as Fallout 4's is.
I would argue that they're pretty much as close as you could get given the restrictions, the limitations.
Right. Yeah, I was very impressed with, because I played around a little bit with what's the mod that Chesco did, Conquest. Because I was trying to look into
Fallout 4.
Yeah, to see how, because a lot of the code was ported over, and like he emulates like the placement of workshops outside of workshops using scripts. Like, it's pretty impressive. Like, because that's old ported code from Skyrim, and it basically the way as far as I can tell, the way he does it, and this is something I've been meaning to put on my list, but my list is forever long. Is you can use the way you can kind of cheat and find walls and stuff is you fire invisible projectiles and you leave at their impact point, you leave a marker that you can then use to judge distances and stuff. It's pretty slow to do, so you're limited. You can't do it in real time as far as like having it be as smooth as Fallout 4, but it's pretty damn smooth as you're laying down things out in the ground. And so stuff like that, I'm like, all right, you can do a lot with just Papyrus if you want to get clever. And it's really
definitely
impressive.
Which is that is very impressive, and that's one of those things that I wouldn't have been privy to if I wasn't hanging out in places like the Nexus Mod authors channel and stuff like that. I get to, and that's I'm backtracking slightly, but my point was that hanging out with and networking with those kind of people is kind of how I made my connections, I guess.
Sure.
Because I stick around in all these places. I keep my ear to the ground,
Right.
Well,
it's a good way to get into it, and a good way to learn too. So I when I launched the Bethesda Mod School, one of the points I made in the intro video was that we tend to form tribal knowledge in modding scenes, and it's not just modding. It happens in every industry, in every educational sector, like everything in the world, and tends to form little pockets of tribal knowledge, and the best way to get access to that knowledge is to just be part of all those tribes. And so like I would say to anybody who wants to take modding seriously or do really complex modding, is the best way to do it is to just start hanging around any of the groups that welcome you, and just start and participate as much as you can, and you'll pick up little bits here and there until you're ready to ready to pull the trigger and do something big like Barstool Games. Because that's, it's an impressive piece of art. You guys simulated a damn card game in Fallout 4, which is not designed to handle that in any way, shape, or form.
No. Actually, I think the part about Barstool Games that I love the most was, bringing my experience from Fallout New Vegas. I think what I hated the most about it was you couldn't spend time playing the card games, in the sense that the game time never progressed when you played at the casinos and stuff like that. So one of the big, great, sort of more or less accidental side effects. I knew that was something I wanted to do, but I didn't know exactly how yet. But one of the great side effects of actually doing the card game in world, so to speak, instead of Flash and all that, is that the game progresses because it's not a menu.
So
it's
like it'll actually
happening.
get dark and light overhead. I mean, it could. I know you guys are using a cell, but
yeah.
But yeah, you could arrange for it to happen in the game world, or you could put a simulated light source. You could make it an extra. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm sure
make
you
a
could do it,
skybox.
or you could make a skybox. So yeah, there should be ways to do that. I was just trying to think of some
problem
of the
with that is that we wanted it so that you could playing the card game could be done, but from basically any location, such as plots at settlements, is so that. So like say you're actually inside, it would be kind of weird if you were inside like a bar and then suddenly not at settlement, but if you were inside a bar and then suddenly you're like there's a day-night cycle, you're like what's going on?
Right.
And stuff like that. And that's why, and you may not have gotten there yet, but that's why there's like sound effects and stuff of people moving and actively being part of the world around you.
I guess you could argue in the same point is like if I
effect.
set up my table outside in Sim Settlements or in your workshop mode, and then all of a sudden there's no skybox, it would be just as immersion breaking.
Exactly, but here's the thing: we didn't originally plan to do Sim Settlement support.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Sorry, Doug.
I think our Discord connection cut there for a second.
No worries. We didn't originally plan to do Sim Settlement support. That came.
Well, you were going to do
after.
You did settlement support though, right? People can build their own tables.
Yes, but that also came later. The original plan and the initial release of Barstool Games was just interacting with real NPCs out in the game, out in the Commonwealth.
Particular locations, sure.
Right.
Yeah. You guys could do another trick, and so, see, Dante suggested this to me as a way to solve the shelter problem. And it's the same thing that I just talked about with chess code using is you could use a projectile, fire it up above the player, and determine if they're in a cell or not. If they're in.
You'd need a big link though, because one of the play areas, spoiler I guess kind of, is Vault 88 Atrium, so that's a tall roof.
Right. But
So as long as you made your length long
but
enough,
you could get most spaces with just a short one, just to detect are they
right?
Because I guess with the vaults it would be you would just be you're inside an interior cell, because you can check if you're an interior or exterior already. It's just a matter of
what, you're right.
Are you exterior but do you have a roof over your head? That you could check with firing a projectile.
You're right. Shoot. See, this is why kinggath. I'm adding things here. Like this is why I got to come back later.
Yeah. Well, that's why I find it really fun to go back to old mods. The hard part is always, and this is why I will tell if I ever caught up. Well, I will eventually. But once I get to papyrus scripting, I'm gonna be hammering people about putting comments in their own code. It's like, this is not for other people. This is for you, man. This is for yourself. It's like coming back and reading your code later, you're going to have no idea why you did certain things. And you're going to think, I'm an idiot, unless you put notes in. And then you'll probably still think I was an idiot, but at least you'll have notes so you could follow the logic. And that's the hard part about coming back to an old mod is you got to relearn what you were thinking, however many years ago or whatever. I'm anticipating being very, very disappointed in myself when I come back to Salvage Beacons one day. But yeah, it's exciting, the idea of okay, I built this, which turned out pretty damn good with pretty limited knowledge on how the game works. And now I come back after 2-3 years of modding every week, and it's like, man, I know way more. So that'll probably open up possibilities. And I think it's the same thing with when you hang out with groups like this, is you have access to all these different people, is when you share your mod, or you start having a discussion like this about how you do things, and somebody from an outside perspective who hasn't been tunneled in on the way you've been doing things can throw ideas out there you never thought of. We've had that happen a bunch of times on Sim Settlements. I remember one of the biggest ones, I had somebody joined our forums on the and I'm way behind, and I apologize to everybody on the Sim Settlements forums of reading the suggestions forums, but I used to read it every week to keep an eye on, and I would especially go over it when I was planning new expansions. But somebody proposed the easiest, simple solution to the notification spam that we had in Sim Settlements that I always hated. And I don't know how I never thought of this, and props to them, and I apologize I don't have your name off the top of my head, but somebody suggested, why not put a quest that tracks the plots and put some marker up whenever they upgrade, and then people can just turn that quest on and off. I was like, that's genius. And I never thought of it because I was just too close to the project. So like there's a lot of that can happen. And if you're around people who are creative problem solvers, which everybody who mods Bethesda games is a creative problem solver, because there's a lot of stuff you just can't do unless you get real creative. Well, a lot of those people will have...
I love that.
Yeah, I love it too. That's the most enjoyable part about the modding, is when I run into brick walls and I'm like, all right, how am I going to make this work? Because I'm going to make this happen. How am I going to make it work?
A really good part of that too, at least from my perspective, is less so because yes, you get to learn how to work around problems, stuff like that, and that's a useful skill. But also, I just love hearing about the crazy, hilarious, wacky things people had to do to work around different problems that they experienced. I think it was on your podcast where you talked about somebody who had an invisible cat follow you.
And I heard that was Sinante, and actually he got his. It was on Kotaku or something. Like somebody posted an article about wonky things video games have done, and like that his mod ended up on there. His thing from the mod ended up on there, and he said it was only for a day, and they picked up on it somehow. that happened. Like
that's so great.
He patched it out immediately. But
that's so funny.
Yeah, there's a lot of that happens in. It's happening less and less, I think, because the Bethesda is, they're getting a lot of crap right now, obviously, because people were disappointed with the way they launched 76, and now they're getting. They seem somewhat predatory with their monetization schemes. Whatever, I still give them so much love for the way they support modding, and you can tell in all their designs they try and add in hooks. Like you can see it in their source code. You can see in the way they design certain systems. It's like they want this to be modded, and they're trying to make it more and more module with each new game.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. Do you ever think that sidebar real quick?
Sure. That's what this podcast should be called, sidebar, because we just go down random paths and maybe we come back to the primary subject. Maybe. Go ahead.
I don't know if you've seen it, but have you? Or I recently today actually watched the Internet Historian's video about the fall of 76. Have you seen that?
I did see that. That was actually a really entertaining documentary. Because it was a little bit, it was a little sarcastic, but it wasn't the clickbaity garbage rage videos that came out, in those first few months of Fallout 76, where everyone was basically
factual.
Right, it was factual and interesting and a little funny, but it wasn't. Yeah. It wasn't. It wasn't obnoxious.
The part that caught me off guard about it, I guess, that I didn't really expect, because I don't harbor too much hate for 76 personally. But the thing that caught me off guard about it was when we all, as people in the Bethesda community, I guess I'll call it the extended Bethesda community, when we all were experiencing all these, problems, I guess, with Fallout 76, it didn't seem as big a deal, perhaps because they were spaced out. They didn't all happen like right away, but when he lays it all out like that in one short timeline, you're like, wow, that's just
I was following it pretty close, and that's why I was talking about how it got to be obnoxious at the end, because there was just a series of YouTubers who were all just like piling on the punch Bethesda while they're down bandwagon, but they really brought it on themselves with a lot of that stuff, with just so many incidents one after the other. And I actually did do the pre-order with the big thing, so I've got that crappy canvas bag.
Oh, no.
And I did put in a ticket, and I'm pretty sure my info got spoiled, like open to the public, and like
released,
so like I was involved in all that.
And
I didn't get suckered into the
software side.
I didn't get suckered into the rum thing though.
Oh, good.
But yeah, it was just like a series of disasters for them. So. Ugh.
Yeah, that was pretty bad.
But a lot of that would have went under the radar if it weren't for, like, it was kind of like as soon as you do something stupid, you get the spotlight on you for a while, and it's during that time frame you don't want to do anything else stupid, otherwise everyone's going to notice. Whereas like if each of those had happened a few months apart, no one would have cared. Like they wouldn't have been news. But it was the fact that all of them came to a head within like a month and a half. It was like, oh god.
Yeah. That's just bad. It was just one. I gotta say, I love the balls on the market or the PR people over there, because that response, we're not going to do anything about it. Oh my gosh, I've wanted to say that to so many people. But
well, what's interesting that the guy didn't include in that historian thing that I remember seeing during the live coverage of that was Bethesda. So I get what they said, why they said this, but it turned out that was an intern or something, like an extra hire, like seasonal hire or the equivalent thereof. and Bethesda said that, like, that this was a temporary employee. It's like, oh, don't put that on them. Like, that doesn't look good either. Like, I get it. Like, yeah.
No.
But they probably didn't come up with that information on their own. They probably heard it in a staff meeting or something. And
yeah, that's what they
right,
probably told them to say.
Don't throw that kid under the bus. Like, that was, to me, was the bad part, is that they threw the kid under the bus about it. Because, like, you could have just said, sorry, we made a mistake. We shouldn't have said something like that, blah, blah, blah. But instead, they tried to throw the kid under the bus for a moment, which is, I think they probably were in panic mode for a little while there, because it was looking pretty grim. In the news,
but to dig back out of that rabbit hole, I wanted to ask, do you think that Bethesda has recognized the increased marketability of their games with mod support, or do you think this is something they do because they've just always done it, so to speak?
No, I'm not sure, because like I think that they're having a little battle internally, not necessarily between people, but maybe ideologically, of like, should we jump on this microtransaction bandwidth, which is worth, or a bandwagon, which is worth, obviously, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and risk alienating our player base, or should we ignore it altogether? And I think, like, I don't think you can, like, because they're a private company. They're not beholden to shareholders, so they don't have to follow the money. Almost every other company is publicly traded. They basically have, if they don't do microtransactions, they could be considered fiscally negligible or negligent. Like, it could be like they are not chasing money that's available, which is, this is one of the critiques people have against capitalism, is that it's, you're almost a slave to the dollars. If you're not chasing it, you're almost breaking the law, and like, that's a problem, obviously. Yeah. And they don't have to do it. They're a private company; they can do whatever they want. But they obviously if modding was available for Fallout 76, like, say, out of the box, it would have severely hit their bottom line with the Atom Store. There's no question. If people could get a lot of this stuff for free, they're not going to buy it on the store. Obviously, for console users, it's going to be a different story. But at the same time, I don't think that they're naive about the fact that modding is what extends the life of their games for years and years. But in this case, like with something like 76, where they're kind of staying involved, with the goal is to stay involved in perpetuity, they're always going to have a struggle there. So I don't know how that changes things, and clearly they haven't released mod support yet. And I think that they originally said the earliest they would do mod support would be this year, so a year after launch. Yeah, the private servers and mod support. Yeah. So that might be something they announce at E3. It might be like, here's the date for private servers. And you can't really blame them for not wanting mod support of that game right away. Like, the logistics of having mods in an online server side game, like, that's obviously, I mean, other games have tackled it and it can be done. It's not like it's impossible or anything, but in their engine, they have to first figure out, like, how do we deal with our own live game in that scenario. So I don't think that they've lost commitment to modding or anything. I actually think that they need to double down. I think they need to double down on it, is what I think. I think that they are being too timid about modding. I think they haven't recognized that in this current marketplace of every game being free to play, or not every game, but it's like, it's such a dominant method of game delivery right now, because
But the thing with that, though, is that, yes, that is the dominant method of game delivery, but the problem is Bethesda doesn't have this is not me bashing them, I'm saying this kind of affectionately, they don't have the quality of production of their games for people to ignore the bugs and issues and still play it and still engage in their microtransaction system. For example, everybody's going to give Apex Legends a pass because it's free. You didn't spend any money to play the game. So yeah, if it's buggy or whatever, you're going to put up with it. And then it's still free. You've gotten hours of entertainment. So okay, throw them $5-10 in their custom store, or whatever. But Fallout 76 was how many dollars for you? $60 for me. But
I spent way too much on that for the fancy edition.
Borderline didn't work.
No, I'm not defending Fallout 76 at all. What I'm saying is, what I think that they need to do is leverage their modding communities as a value proposition for people to buy their games and be happy with them. So, for example, when Starfield comes out, if they have not only mod support, but they extend mod support, so things like, it's available very close to launch, it's supported right in the menu, in the game menu. They take more time to be involved with the modders community. Like when one of the things that was interesting that I saw with Fallout 4 that I'd never seen before was how many of Bethesda employees were engaging on the Bethesda.net forums and answering questions to mod authors, and also being willing to make changes to the game. Like they extended like some limitations in the game based on feedback from mod authors, which was, you never hear of that in games. So like I think more of that to where they can almost leverage their modding community to be the ones that create unlimited free content for their users, and they are promoting and supporting it. So almost promoted as like so we'll help you guys, you creators, instead of trying to monetize it. Just look at it from the perspective of, okay, you have an opportunity here to have unlimited content created for your games for free. You don't have to pay these guys anything. Don't get money involved. And now all of a sudden you have a huge leg up over all your competition on other games. So like, if you have all these other open world RPGs that are stepping into the game, like there aren't or stepping into the market, Bethesda can leverage the fact that they have an army of content creators ready to go for free who will continue to create new content for their game. And like that, I don't think they're weaponizing that properly. I think that they should be doing a lot more.
I'd agree. And I think already historically, I mean, you, me, I'm sure countless other people have bought multiple copies of many of their current and old games because of the availability of modding and sort of, the draw that appeal. Yeah. Because I mean, you started out on console, I believe, and I did as well. And then after learning about the modding community and for these games, that was enough to easily be like, this is definitely worth the rebuy, because I'm just basically just doubling the game.
Right.
Or more,
I own 3 copies of Fallout 4 because I bought it for Xbox, played it on there, and then when I decided to then I bought it on PC when I was ready for my second playthrough because I couldn't deal with load screens anymore. And then once I got into modding, it was like, right, well, I could work a lot faster if I could dev on one machine and test on the other. So then I was like, well, I got to buy a copy for that computer. So yeah, I bought 3 copies of Fallout 4, and I own at least 2 copies of Skyrim for the same reason. Of I own one on Xbox and one on PC.
Yeah, there you go. So I think that modability and stuff, and also, what if, hypothetical, but and maybe a bit of an out there hypothetical, but what if Bethesda once they're done, what if Bethesda advertised some of these large mod projects like Cascadia and Miami as user fan created? They didn't try to claim it as their own, but they advertised it as mods, as user fan made content, but did the advertising on their own stage, so to speak, their own platform, to get that word out to more people. I'd be willing to bet that some people would be interested, certainly, in purchasing a even maybe a slightly reduced price version of Fallout 4 on the PC just to check out these basically new worlds, games, etc. that are coming to it. So maybe there's a potential for that to weaponize, quote unquote.
Yeah. I think there definitely is. I think they could be, and it wouldn't cost them much just with digital advertising, and they already have a huge marketing budget. But to go back and throw out more, they're lightly touching on that now because they've started putting out articles they've been doing this for well over a year now. They've been put out articles featuring half dozen mods on the Bethesda.net page, which is pretty cool. But they could definitely take that farther. I don't know if it's not going to be worth like a television advertisement, but maybe a block of YouTube ads or something would be cool to promote their things and get some extra sales of the game. But yeah, I think
even if they put it on their own channel, so it doesn't really cost them anything. They just upload it to their own YouTube channel or their own website. Like, what does that cost you? Not much. And the best part is you could probably, I could guarantee that you could probably get the teams of these mods to create the trailer for you. So then all you have to do is just upload it.
I think that they could offer more support to the mod community and market it and use it as a way to be like, our games are more valuable than our competitors, because it is gonna, one of the things as we start to see, I've noticed a weird trend in game review channels is that I'm trying to put my finger on what exactly is going on here, but it seems to be there's a lot of people burning out on gaming right now, and they're all throwing out their theories of why it is. And to me, it all seems that it's obvious to me is it's like you guys are just getting older. Like all of you have been doing this since teenagers. You're now in your 30s. Like you're just growing up, and like games aren't for you anymore. But they keep trying to come up with theories about, and I think some of their theories are partially correct too, of things that games are becoming ubiquitous. Like all the games are kind of becoming the same, and they're all getting all of the features. And so then it's just like which one has the skin on it, and then which year's version are you playing to where it's just not exciting. And that I think there's definitely some truth to there, but I think then once you get to that point to where it becomes there's this set of features we all expect in every game, then you need ways to differentiate yourself. And I think a great easy way to differentiate Bethesda games would be like, hey, we have literally thousands of people out there who commit themselves to making additional content for our games for free, and you guys should come check it out. And like I think that's they're clearly headed in that direction with the mods screen right in the game. Like that was a huge huge boon for mod developers, if for those of us who are heavily motivated by download counts anyway.
Oh yeah. Do you think that it's possible that video games as a media are maybe slowly losing their novelty to, I mean, because the youngest of the generation, or I'm sorry, the oldest of the current gaming generation would have seen the very early days of video games in the the classic retro space, and so that was like a great novelty.
Right.
And do you think that that's possible, that video games are becoming so commonplace now that they've almost they've become like cable television?
Oh,
or,
absolutely.
Not yet, but
yeah, no, I think they're absolutely at that stage. They're pretty, especially things like a shooter. Like all shooters feel roughly the same. I think it's just like Hollywood movies. Like the big summer blockbusters. They never go away. They're always there. There's just going to be less and less of them because people aren't looking. There's not enough variety left in the space to explore. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, yes, there is. There's tons more variety you can do. And I agree with you, but maybe not at the broad appeal AAA space. There's only so much you can do in that regard. Like we're getting close to like photorealistic graphics, and the mechanics already in these games feel unbelievably good. So it's like there's not as much of, if you grew up playing shooters in the 90s, each new iteration could offer little bits to be like, this is, we've upped our frame rates, we can do this now, we've got more polygons, more textures. Like you could advertise these features at tech level, and that was excitement enough to get into it. But now it's kind of everybody's the same. So there's not a lot of advancement in that regard. Like everything feels really solid. Everything looks amazing, sounds amazing. So there's not a lot more evolution that can happen in that space. Now the evolution that remains it seems to be right now the focus of game companies is how do we keep people's attention. And that to me is another point where I think we're getting burned out, is like every game's trying to suck us in for thousands of hours, and it's like we don't have enough time for that. There's
no.
Like a big movie wants your attention for 3 or 4 hours, and games want hundreds or obviously young people have unlimited time, but that's another reason where I laugh when all the 30-somethings or game reviewers are complaining about the industry. It's like, you're not the target audience anymore. They want the people who have all the time in the world and their parents' credit cards.
Exactly. Yeah. But I guess I'm glad that I found this community in the a rough similar age range of people who can be this passionate about this media and stuff. Like it's not gone yet, right? There's still plenty of us around who are of this age range roughly that can have a serious passion and continue to even go as far as to turn this stuff into borderline, you more so than me, turn it into jobs.
An unpaying job.
Right, exactly. And I never thought, when I was a kid playing games, I never would have even imagined that possibility. I grew up in the American South, and it's still to this day in that region. And if you're from the South, you may understand, or maybe you're fortunate enough that you have no idea what I'm talking about. But there's a taboo, and you may have experienced it too when you were younger, around gaming and everything like that. So everybody's parents really and it wasn't so much as like just allowing your kid to play video games, but just not chastising them for doing so. Like it was like at the point where if you spent an hour a day playing a game, it was like you've got an issue,
Right,
like you've
right.
got problems, and
Well, I think
like
that's
what's wrong with your kid.
I think that's still an issue today. I think there's the constant battle with parents and screen time. I mean, I'm starting to experience that. Of
Right.
like, I see, like, if I hand my kid my phone and let him watch a video on YouTube, like, it's like, here, watch this, hey, watch Baby Shark, and then as soon as I try and take it away from him, he like loses his little mind. And so you can see like there's addiction possibilities with that stuff. So I still think that hasn't gone away. Well, the one I remember in my youth was the battle for video game violence. And, you know, like, it was like the government was going to try and get involved for a while. Like during, you know, like they looked at games like Grand Theft Auto and Postal and Doom, and they were like, this is disturbing. Now it's just, people just accept it. Now I think sex in video games is the one where it gets everybody all uneasy.
Yeah.
But as far as like
That's the
horrible violence, no one cares anymore. They're just like, whatever. That's just what's in games.
Well, all of media has transitioned to that way too. I mean, there were actual laws for movies that couldn't portray, you know, partial nudity, much less full, or in games and stuff, or not in games, in movies there were actual laws for that. But then they transitioned away from it. People, I mean, it just culturally, all of media has just stopped caring about, like, how many TV shows nowadays? Game of Thrones. You see people getting decapitated like what, every other episode. Like,
I think some of those rulings still hold on public broadcasting. So, like, I think the big, like the big public networks, like the stuff that's still broadcast outside of cable, I think they still have some pretty heavy restrictions. But yeah, I think the idea behind the cable stuff is it's all private, so you can put whatever you want on there.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, I think you're right.
But yeah,
about
that's
that.
what I remember from my youth of the video games, the more negative side of things, less than the amount of time that we were playing.
Yeah, I guess it was more of a, for me, it was more of a competing sort of culture and lifestyle. Like the lifestyle of an avid video gamer, mod author, etc., someone who's passionate for more than just playing these games and is fascinated with the culture surrounding them, was that I couldn't succeed, quote unquote, socially.
Okay.
In where I was. Like, for example, I sometimes, and getting better about merging or bridging the gap between the two. For example, in what I'm about to say, I kind of have like this dual sort of lifestyle. In college, I'm a fraternity member. I do intramural sports and stuff like that. And I hate to tell you, not a lot of fraternity guys doing some mod authoring out there. I know, because I look for them.
You're telling me exactly why I started this podcast. It was like, I don't know anybody, literally zero people in real life that I can talk to about modding. Like my wife, no idea. My gamer friends don't even play with mods. It's like this is such a foreign concept. So it's like we're a small minority group that actually make mods, much less even play. Even if you count the number of people who play with mods, it's a tiny group overall.
Yes, yeah, I agree, and that's sort of one of those things I've had to come to terms with, is sort of like all the people that I interact with, you know, in the real world on a daily basis, just have absolutely no idea about this other, maybe even more than half of my life at this point. Like, I'm putting a lot of time into this stuff, and so it's just kind of, you know, family, friends, they have no idea, and I don't know that they ever will. But it's kind of a weird thing, and it's kind of been a blessing to just find a community that, you know, will take all types. I thought I was going to get shunned because I was you know, as soon as the first time I told somebody in modding that I was part of a fraternity, so I had XYZ responsibility, and so I couldn't make whatever team meeting it was. Yeah. I thought I was going to get just absolutely ridiculed and be like, we don't accept your kind here, and just all sorts of stuff.
No, I think it tends to be that the gamer types, like the people who who might have spent like their high school being harassed and bullied and pushed into little out groups, tend to be very inviting of everybody else, just because I think they know the feeling of being rejected, and so don't want to push that out on others. So I don't think I think that also gaming and gaming culture and nerd culture in general has become pretty mainstream. Like, it's not like saying you're a nerd anymore doesn't really mean the same thing it used to. It's kind of people take that as a term of endearment and embrace it, which is very strange. It's like, it's so strange to see, for example, like I was a comic book nerd in middle school and high school, and seeing like that now being the most valuable properties is so bizarre. It's like, Like they're taking all of my favorite things and turning them into some of the best looking movies I've ever seen. I was like, I would never ever have dreamed that. And like, there's just random like freaking like hearing late night television making Thanos jokes. It's like, what?
Yeah, exactly. That's so crazy. Are you kicking yourself now because all of the magazines that you thumbed through and maybe ripped a little bit because you read them so much as a kid are now would be worth?
No, not really. Like I wasn't that early an adopter. Like I think the real valuable stuff is the stuff from the 40s and 50s. The stuff I had was like like I remember I was really into Spider-Man during the Clone Wars time, and so like none of that stuff is worth anything as far as I know. I mean, maybe somebody who's a more avid collector knows, but. I was rough on those things. I like actually, I carry them around with me and thumb through them and probably have peanut butter and stuff on them or whatever. I don't remember exactly how old I was when I was reading them, but I assume
old peanut butter.
I assume I had some sort of sticky fingers going on at the time. Wow, I just realized that sounds like a masturbatory joke.
I wasn't going to say
anything. I was going to let it roll. Sticky fingers.
Oh my gosh!
But yeah, it's just weird. It's weird. I would never expect that from the modding community or any gaming community to be rejecting people and calling them jocks or something like that. Just doesn't seem to make any sense anymore. That seems like bizarro world to see that happen.
Oh, absolutely. But I'm reminded now in talking to you, and I mentioned this to you before, but we talked about how it would be a good topic for the podcast. But as I'm sitting here. Are there any authors out there that, I mean, you've mentioned already, I think, that you look up to in sort of like people that you sort of take inspiration from or have guided your modding workflows / process?
I mean, it's just the people who don't accept the limits. So so like Registrator, people. It tends to be ironically the people who do Xedit scripted mods because they can break through the limits. But those people, so like Reg2K, Nyanka, Sidante, the people who really do like these crazy mods that end up transforming what we can do as players. That stuff inspires me, but I try and do it. I've set my own personal limitation of like, let's do it within the confines of what Bethesda allows, and so
right.
I don't know how to phrase this because clearly those people have decided, well, I'm just going to use the script extender and I can get past any limitation, and I don't know why I don't know if it's I'm trying to prove myself better than them because that's clearly not the case. But
right.
like I guess it's a challenge. I look at it as a challenge. It's just for me, modding is all about throwing challenges at myself. So it's I have some ideas. It's like, how can I pull this off? And that's the fun for me is finding is solving puzzles. I mean, like I've mentioned many times, I'm a puzzle guy. I love the old school adventure games where you had almost no clue. Like throw me into Myst or Riven and I'm ecstatic. Where I have no concept of what you just got to figure it out and bash your head against it until you get there. And that's what modding is. Is you're doing that.
I love that.
So,
do you remember? I'm guessing you're nostalgic for me, it was the old school days of playing games like that. For me, it was like PlayStation 1 and 2 era. For you, it may be a little bit older than that. But playing games and if you didn't know what to do, you either had to find a friend who knew what to do, or because there wasn't really any. You couldn't just Google it.
Right. Yeah,
that wasn't the thing.
Yeah, it was. Well, we could go to the library and Alta Vista or something.
Really. It's funny. That's hilarious. And I always
or you would get people would have like in gaming magazines occasionally they would have walkthroughs of certain hard parts of games. Yeah, but yeah, I would try and bash my head through them. But I love that stuff. I love always having something to puzzle through and figure out. And so looking to the people who have done these amazing things and like, all right, how close can I get to what they've done with the limitations the game engine allows? And like then whenever I see what they've pulled off, at least I know who to ask to be like, I can go to them and be like, all right, what was the straw that broke the camel's back? Where did you get stuck? And be like, I gotta use the script extender. And I see exactly why they did for a lot of those things, because it's like the implementations that I can do without it are just a little wonky or not quite right. And yeah, those are the people that I tend to look up to. People who make the game, who completely like break the mold and change what we can pull off.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think those are some very inspiring people. Keeping the ball rolling though on learning more about you, because this interview is unique for me, this podcast is unique for me because whenever we interact and talk, I feel like maybe 9 times out of 10, maybe 9.5 times out of 10, it's it's work related, it's sim settlements related.
Right. Talk about tasks at hand. What do we have to do? Exactly,
and that's for a good reason. It's because we want to get this stuff done because it's fun for everybody. And so I'm going to take advantage of this opportunity to ask some questions that neither of us normally have the time for. I mean, you're a very busy person. And so when you started out with modding, and you've mentioned, and I don't want to rehash it, that you've modded for previous games.
Yeah.
When you set out to start modding for Fallout 4, you explained previously your reasoning for wanting to create salvage beacons. That's the first mod that I know you of for Fallout 4. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's the first one I created, yeah.
Okay. And you explained your thought process for wanting to create that mod. Yeah. What were the things that the big obstacles and hurdles that you had to overcome, the things that really tested your will, maybe, so to speak, as because you were learning this new system?
Yeah, I was learning the way the Fallout 4 creation kit worked. I had done virtually nothing with Papyrus prior,
which could surprise anybody that was your first mod. I don't want to talk about what my first mod was.
I don't talk about the games, the stuff I've released for prior games, because none of it's very impressive.
Okay.
And some of it is disturbing, but the Fallout for salvage beacons were one of the challenges. I think they were really just I think the initial challenge for that one was getting the NPCs to do what I wanted, because the way AI packages work just feel very weird to me. Like, I get them now, but it feels like Bethesda has no control over their own characters, the way they've designed their system, which is it's just a very odd thing. I would have thought I would have had way more direct control, but it's almost like the NPCs are designed to be living creatures doing their own thing, and you can give them suggestions of what you want them to do.
Yes, exactly.
That's how it feels.
Everything is more of a suggestion.
Right. And so, like, getting to work with that.
If you got the time.
Yeah, that was a challenge. It was really a challenge to understand the concept of the fact that not everything is loaded into memory at once, and so you can't just have free access to everything you want in the game world, which, obviously that it makes sense in reality. You think about, like, there are literally millions of items in the game world. Like, obviously they can't all be in memory at once, but the ramifications of that and all the things that caused problems with. And then I think the bigger issues were always so those were my two, I think, initially just humps, and then after that it was just bug fixes. Like, people would come up with these crazy bugs. I was like, I have no idea how I caused that, and then having to trace through and figure out what I did. Like, for a while, in one of the early releases of salvage beacons, the gate to the Nuka World market, it would delete it. So, and I think I got that bug report recently, which means that there's somebody out there who still has an old version of salvage beacons. Ooh. Likely, this is one of the problems with certain patch mods or sites that will allow others to host mods. Like, I think ModDB has a copy of it that they shouldn't.
Yeah.
I mean, whenever I find those, I try and tell them to take them down, just because I don't want to have to manage this problem.
Yeah.
Of
this exact situation.
Right. Of, like, I fixed that bug a year and a half ago. Like, you shouldn't be hosting old versions of my stuff. It would accidentally delete the gate to the market at Nuka World. And it turned out what I had been doing was, in order to keep track. One of the problems with the not everywhere being loaded, the other thing I had to solve was,
that's what I was going to ask about.
So, like, for example, I want the salvage beacon team to I wanted them to literally walk from the settlement directly to the container, no matter where it was. And so I didn't understand. Now I know it would have been way easier if I had just used AI packages properly. At the time, I didn't understand how they fully worked. So what I was doing was I was leaving an X marker whenever a player would change cells. I was leaving an X marker behind where they last were, and then the NPCs would walk to that. That was their destination. I've since learned now that the AI can travel between cells, and you don't need to do anything this complex. But that's what I thought had to be done to make this thing work. And then after the player would return, it would delete that X marker. Well, for a while, I wasn't just using X markers I created. I was like, okay, well, if they teleport in a door, I can just use the last door. So then when I put the delete code in to clean up the X markers, it was cleaning up the doors.
No.
Yeah, so just leaving a
God.
trail of destruction between world spaces. Oops.
Oh God, yeah, sell everything.
Yeah. So
wow.
all sorts of teleporting doors could get destroyed in the first version of Salvage Beacons.
Yeah. How did you? I'm glad. I guess I came along after that. How did you get around that, leaving the X marker behind?
I still haven't. It's still there. That's still a thing.
Oh, okay.
But I just made sure
okay.
it always leaves an X marker instead of, like, the X markers are still left and they clean themselves up and blah blah blah, and that all works. I no longer use the doors for that purpose. I was it was basically the code was on location change. If door. Well, I don't remember exactly how it was written, but it was basically like if it found a door, just use that. If otherwise, use an X marker. Now it just always uses an X marker, so I can safely delete it because I placed the X marker, so it's fine.
Do you know what your original thought process was for using the door instead of placing an X marker anyway?
No idea. I mean, a lot of it was like you're just a lot of times with modding, and I recommend people I still recommend people mod like this. Is you just need to, and this is in all software development, you need to rapid prototype to keep yourself motivated. You need to just make
get
it
working.
work, and then once it's working, then you can polish it up. Well, at that point, I got it working, and I didn't think about the repercussions later because the deleting the X marker thing happened later when people were reporting that I was bloating their saves with these X markers. And I was like, oh yeah, I should clean those up. And then just not thinking about the door thing when I threw the delete code in there. So it was just kind of a cascade of issues. So I started out just rapidly developing, and then going back and cleaning things up. But the and I remember now why I was using the X markers. It wasn't necessarily just for the AI packages. That was part of it. It was because I wanted to calculate the distance that the NPCs had to travel so that I could make sure that I could calculate a delivery time. So because when I first was experimenting with the mod, I was trying to make them actually go to the container, pick up the items, and drop them off in your workbench. And that turned out to be really risky. Like half the time, the NPCs wouldn't make it to their destination ever. Sometimes they would make it like 6 weeks later, and so you'd lose items. And so then I was like, all right, well, I still want to simulate that. So in order to do the distance calculation to simulate, I just had to place an X marker so I could measure between them. So it was literally like, can I do a get if you do a get distance check between world spaces, it gives you a negative number. That turns out to be like 6 billion units or something, and then the calculation would be weeks. So so that's why I had done that X marker thing, is I needed to always be able to calculate the distance so I could simulate the travel time.
Wait, so the X marker distance still works in between world spaces?
No, so I would measure between the entrances. So it would be like, let's say you go to Nuka World, and you want to have your stuff, and your nearest salvage team is like in Warwick Homestead. Then my system would measure from the last X marker I left behind near the entrance to Nuka World from there to Warwick, and then I would have left another one on the other side of the trolley, and then it would be from there to your current location. So then it would just add those two together, and then it had an accurate thing, and I could combine and divide that out by the walking speed that's pre-programmed in the game. I don't know what it is anymore, but I went. It was me. It was me going to crazy lengths to try and get this simulation working. So it was just, I'm all about that immersion.
Yeah, but I think now maybe I'm not saying you're totally abandoning the simulation stuff, but I think now maybe you've leaning a little bit more into the pool of, okay, well, if the player's never going to see this, we don't really need to do it.
I would still do it. I would probably I would probably dial it up a few notches if I went back to it.
Really?
Yeah, I would probably make it.
Okay.
I think like if I was going to go back and make a version 2.0 of Salvage Beacons, I would probably make them. I now know how I could make them carry the goods successfully, so I would make them actually carry it. There would probably be like an optional system where there'd be a chance where they get ambushed and you have to go rescue them, stuff like that.
You've taken it over from simulation to full blown.
Yeah, I think
we're talking real world stuff.
Yeah, I think it would make it more. I think it would make it more of a risk reward thing to play with them. Like you could use them, but there's a small chance that your squad gets ambushed, and then maybe we introduce some mechanics where you can pay some extra resources to give them or maybe you build you upgrade the salvage desks to give them an armory so that they can be heavier equipped, stuff like that. Like just make it more of a mini game.
Yeah. I love sim settlements. Obviously, if like that, I don't need to say that I'm working on them. But salvage beacons for me as a user, as an admirer, is one of those mods where the in the actual gameplay effect on how you approached and played and treated the game was so profound that it can totally fundamentally change the way you approach exploration and gameplay, because for the people out there who wanted to avoid, say hypothetically you use salvage beacons, but you're also the type of player that wants to avoid the settlement system because XYZ.
Right.
Fair enough. You don't like building, whatever. And that leads into some settlements, but ignore that for now. Salvage beacons gives you this tool that you don't have to use, obviously. But without it, you don't realize how much you're personally holding yourself back from just actually enjoying the game, so that you don't have to constantly sit in menus and do inventory management, or constantly have to do this and that and the other and run back to your settlement, or fast travel back to your thing and just do all this stuff and back and forth. Salvage beacons is one of those things that lets you actually say like, hey, and I think this is literally in the mod page. Hey, you know what? You don't need to worry about this. Let the people that you've got to worry about this, you can go do other stuff. So if you choose to ignore that system, you're just hindering yourself. Right. And it was a real, aside from the fact that they force you to do it, but ignoring that, it actually gave settlements a reason for you to interact, even from just a starting point, right, with that system. And that to me was one of the first mods that I had encountered that did something like that. And that's probably why, I hate to break your heart here, but I think if you put a gun to my head and make me choose between just sim settlements or salvage beacons for my game, I would probably take salvage beacons, even though
that's exactly what Gopher has told me. He's like, I think salvage beacons is my favorite mod of all time, not sim settlements. I'm like, all right, that's cool. Yeah, it does have a big impact, and one of the things that is interesting about it is is that it's, for me, like, I don't know how, I think other people feel this way too from feedback I've gotten on it, is it's basically the same thing as using a zero weight inventory mod, like in its grand effect, like at the end of the day. But in actual play, it's completely different. Like it gives you like, right, it's like a psychological trick. It's almost like, all right, because I've solved like there's a problem in Bethesda games in that they present all this loot to you, but basically make it impossible for you to take it all, and that's not fun for a lot of us, for us hoarders, and. Right. So, but having an in-game solution feels better than having a cheat, essentially what the mod is.
Exactly.
So like it allows you to cheat without feeling bad about it, basically. It feels more, and there's enough of there's a cost to it. Like you got to pay to have the beacons made, you have to have taken the effort to set up the thing, so it feels a little bit earned. That was kind of the goal there, and a lot of people said they wanted me to take it further. I want to earn it more. I want there to be like a cost each time I use it, or I want to have to invest more fully in this regularly, because they still feel it still feels too cheaty to them. So yeah, I get what you're saying, and that's why I built it. It was the same, was that idea. I wanted that fundamental shift in the way I approached loot, because I want to loot, but I also don't want to have to stop if I'm having a good time looting.
And I'm glad that you had the maybe forethought or creative mindset to come up with that system, because I think a lot of us realize that we all have that problem, but not a one of us knew a good way to solve it. So thank goodness you showed up with an idea that worked.
Well, there's another improvement I would like to make to it if I got a chance to go back to. Well, I can make a chance to go back to it when I get the time to go back to it, because I have too many other ideas I'm working on, and always the stuff I'm working on with teams has to take priority, because there's other people's time involved. But another feature would be, and this is something I originally wanted with it, is I think it should not only be able to take the stuff you put in a container, I think you should be able to drop one in a cell and have those people loot everything in that cell for you. Is the way I think it should.
Oh,
work.
that would
like
be cool.
you're sending in your cleanup squad to basically go.
You haven't.
That's how it should work, and that I could definitely do that now. I couldn't have done it at the time, but I get how to do that.
I was going to say, do you have an idea for how to actually
it would
do
be
that? You don't have to hash it out.
No, yeah, it would be very easy to do that now with what I know about the game. I probably could have figured it out back then, but my big hiccup that I didn't want to deal with was I didn't want to have to grab, or I was worried about bypassing locks. Like I didn't want people to use it as a cheat. And there's certain things where the items themselves aren't in a container, but they're behind a security gate that has a master lock or a key lock, and that there was no way for me to get around that. Now I think I could come up with a solution for that. Maybe I could have back then if I would have put enough time in it, but I wasn't there mentally. But
that's one of those things that surprises me about the memory is that all that stuff that you would be able to do that if that area of the game wasn't loaded.
Well, you would take advantage of like the trigger at the moment the beacon was placed. You'd basically record all that information.
Okay.
It would be heavy on memory, but I think, maybe it would be so heavy on memory that Xbox players would only be able to use like one beacon at a time or something. I never bothered doing that deep of memory testing because it's too hard to know how many different mods that they're going to have, and I also don't even know how much the core game uses, so I tend to just not even worry about stuff like that. I just try to avoid doing like over the top stuff. Like I'm not going to try and record every single settlement item and keep it in memory. Like that's just not. I know that that's going to be done, but for little bursts and stuff like the salvage beacons. But anyway, the point there was I think that would take that to the next level of freeing you up from worrying about inventory management, because it's not very fun. It is a cool. I like it. Yeah. I like it once or twice per play session. Like I like to feel like before I go out and adventure, I'm having to spend a little time and make my character think about what he's going to take with. What am I going to find out there in the world? How much space am I going to make? I enjoy that at the beginning of my play session, or maybe at the end of my play session. Maybe once in the middle if it's a long play session. Then I don't want to have to deal with it. Then it's a headache.
Right.
And so what I loved about the Fallout 4 loot system is that little quick loot thing where you could quickly. You didn't have to wait for the interface like in New Vegas and Fallout 3 to open the full interface. You could just take a peek and be like, hey, is there anything I need in those 4 or 5 items? No, leave it there and move on. Or just quickly grab the things you want. But then I would still, because the settlement system encouraged and the crafting system encouraged you to grab everything, it always felt bad to leave stuff, but it also felt bad to loot it all. So it was like... I think if I could finish up salvage beacons and get it so that there was an auto looting where it would grab everything, and I think somebody else has already released a mod that does this now, where it's not like salvage beacons with the delivery system, but there is another mod I'm fairly certain that I've seen that you basically can just throw down this thing and it loots everything in the cell. I'm pretty sure there's another mod.
Interesting. I wonder how. I mean, I'm not saying you should or could, but I'm just wondering the feasibility of making like a combination patch kind of deal.
I could probably do it. I'm just not going to. I don't have.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
I've
got bigger fish to
I've got
fry.
too many other things going on right now. I don't want to take on any more projects. Like, and I have and on top of all these ideas we've been talking about with things like salvage beacons, going back to, there's a bunch of mods I have in a notebook of like, maybe one day if we ever wrap some settlements before Fallout 5, I'd like to do these as well.
Well, keep me in mind whenever you eventually make it around to one of those.
Well,
things,
none of them are as quite as extreme as what we've turned in Sim Settlements into, because Sim Settlements has become a behemoth. But I do like some of the things we've done with Sim Settlements development as far as making it very modular and open for other people to add their own takes on it. I really like that because I think there's a lot of stuff that I've spent way too much time on as far as engineering these things that people should be able to take advantage of, and I actually would love to do it further. And I think that's something I did it a lot with Conqueror, with putting in a lot of the systems into Workshop Framework so that people could take advantage of them to use in their own mods to do cool stuff with. But I don't think there's enough of that happens. Like, even though I've spent a lot of time building it modular and open sourcing the code to it, I don't think enough people are taking advantage of it. And I don't know what don't know what the solution to that is. Like, how do you encourage people to do it? The best I've thought of is Bethesda Mod School, my YouTube series. I'm hoping that if I start just showing people, here's how you can use it to do X, that it'll encourage more people to use it. And then it's kind of it's almost one of those. I'm trying to remember the term for this. There's a gap that organizations end up following, there it's like you you start to rise, and then you reach a point. You have to like jump this gap. I can't remember what the phrase is for this, but anyway, like it's kind of like that. It's like I've got to help people leap that gap to where there's enough users that they can be confident are using the framework and the code that they're not afraid to use it themselves. You know what I'm saying? Like there's like it's a maximum.
I have the same problem.
There's an adoption rating. You need to have enough players using it so that mod authors feel comfortable, putting them, using that as their baseline,
doing stuff.
But then you also need enough authors using it to make it worth the installation for the players. So it's kind of this tough.
Absolutely,
it's this tough thing with frameworks, and I think we have a good enough user base for it. Now we just need to train mod authors to be able to use it.
Exactly. And we have the same, Scribner and I have the same problem with Barstool Games. I mean, I kind of rudimentarily explained it, described it to you the other day, but yeah, we built everything out as a big framework, and it is incredibly easy to program your own card games in the sense that like you can use the functions that we've created to do the stuff, but, and things like that, and parameters and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, no one wants to take advantage of it. And it's tough because maybe that is a bit intimidating because it's pretty heavy on the scripting side. Right. So maybe that is a bit intimidating. But even when I put out a YouTube video explaining how that anybody could make a custom NPC, asset, world space, whatever, and it is unbelievably easy. That if you have the framework for Barstool Games installed, it is unbelievably easy to just attach, actually at this point it is literally just a script that you just attach to like a topic info, to an activator, to a furniture, literally anything. Right. And it just catches it, and you can just play the games, that way. And I mean, I don't know that it could be easier to integrate a full mini game into a new mod than just attach this to your thing, literally click what game you want to play. Blackjack is the only one, obviously, at this moment. Click what game you want to play, and off you go. Like that. So it doesn't get much easier than that. And you don't see a whole lot of new world space mods with Blackjack. So
yeah, I don't. Well, it's always a matter of getting. As soon as I think you can get people to install 1, maybe 2 mods as a requirement for yours, and then they start getting complaining. And I understand why. As people are trying to custom tailor their own game experience. And if they're either you've got 2 groups of people. You've got the casuals who are just like don't want to deal with the headache, and then you've got the hardcore guys who have their perfect load order and they just don't want to be asked to add multiple ESP slots. And so it's neither of those people want to deal with more frameworks. And then I think most mod authors know that players hate frameworks, and so, or not necessarily hate frameworks, but hate a bunch of requirements. So then they avoid them as well. And
that's true.
The ESL format was a potential solution for that because it could theoretically, if the frameworks could be ESL, then there's no reason not to make them a requirement. It's not a big ask for people. But I think the fact that ESL, it's a real pain in the ass to update ESLs, and like framework mods tend to need to be bug fixed very rapidly. So then ESL is a bad format for that. But also just that it doesn't fix the problem of people don't want to add multiple things, spend the time downloading multiple files or having to deal with being forced to use multiple mods. Like there's never going to get away from that. The one thing I thought of that might be the solution, and for a while I thought AWKCR could be the solution to this, but it's got way too much other stuff in it that's not necessarily it doesn't necessarily help in this vein. But it's got, I mean, it could be gutted into a version, but having a centralized framework that covered a lot of the frameworky type things that everybody needs, to where it could be kind of like the ultimate framework mod, to where then you just know that every player who's pretty serious about it has this thing, and then we could just keep adding more code frameworks and keyword frameworks and stuff into it. Like that would be sweet, but I don't know that the community is cohesive enough to pull something like that off.
Right. Do you think theoretically, though, it could be possible for someone to go out there, I'm not saying one of us, but someone who knew what they were doing, to go out there and compile these frameworks together to make just sort of one Fallout mod framework? I mean, sure,
it could be done, but it's always going to be a matter of there's control issues, there's philosophy issues about how you develop these things. There's too many problems in that regard. So I think the only way it really would happen, it would have to be like one person would have to be willing to take on and negotiate all those things between all the different people who had done it, or one person would have to start from scratch, build the full thing out, and then try and get and then avoid the framework authors who might have those kind of things. Like I definitely have my own philosophy, and I wouldn't want to be a part of a framework that didn't follow those same things. Like I don't believe in vanilla edits unless all other avenues have been tried, and like I believe like every if you have to change vanilla script, the original signature needs to remain exactly the same as vanilla. So there's a lot of things where people would disagree on, and so you would need to find someone who would negotiate all that stuff or start from scratch, build their own framework that covers all these bases, and then convince all the major mods to make use of it in order to get maximum player adoption. And that's a tall order. Like I don't know if anybody, that anybody wants that job, because it would not be a, you wouldn't get a lot of praise for that. It would be one of those things where once after a while, mod authors would probably appreciate the effort you had put in as long as you kept it working smoothly and bug free. But I think most players, it would be lost on them. So it would be a very stressful, non-glory gaining job.
Right. Yeah. And you may even experience some backlash from the people whose frameworks you rolled in. I mean, that's maybe hypothetically, in the ideal situation, you get their permissions and blessing
you wouldn't be able to do it without that. Like that's the thing. I think you'd either have to negotiate it, or you try and replace them by making your own variation, which would be, either one would be a challenge, because either way you're forced to get all of the mod authors to make patches for or adopt yours as the primary. It's almost one of those things where you need somebody to have it happen within the first few months. Like that's why I think AWKCR worked. And why it has such a wide adoption rate is that it came out real fast. Like they got that out very quickly. Like I remember when I started playing with mods actively, it was already out and established and as one of the top mods. And like that, that happened within the first 6 or 7 months of the game being out. Maybe I'm a little off on that timeline, but it has been out for a long time.
No, you're about right. I think even back in the day when I first installed it, I wasn't even sure what it did. I just knew that it was. Everybody just said you had to have it. I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll get it.
Yeah. Well, and so then most weapon mods require it and use it, and so it's not hard to assume players have it. That's kind of where I think that's where anybody who builds a framework, that's what they want to see. They want to assume every player has it, and then more people can do it. I think Barstool Games is going to be pretty narrow in that regard. Of there's probably only a handful of people who could even, that are in the modding community that even have the capability to create a card game. And then how many of them are interested in that? Because those same people who have that capability can also do a lot of really cool stuff. And then, are they going to want to pursue their own ideas more than a card game? And then, out for other stuff like World Spaces using them, or mods using them, or what do you call it? Like workshop pieces using them. Like then those people are going to be looking for maximum player. They're going to be looking for you guys having a wide enough player base for it to be worthwhile. So it's a tough one. And
maybe more than one mini game eventually.
Well, and I think and we had this conversation the other day about how one of the things with mini games is they're great for people who are looking to extend the life and fully immerse themselves into a game world. They're less good for the casual type of player, which I think Fallout 4 has more casual gamers than ever before, and that's because Bethesda put modding right in, more casual modders than ever before, because Bethesda put it right in the game. So because Xbox players, so there's a lot of people who are not hardcore players who are touching mods now. It's not just there are not 5 million hardcore users of Sim Settlements. There are there's a broad array. There are some hardcore users, and there are some super casual users who we're their only mod. And that's never going to change. There's always going to be that. There's going to be the majority of people when you get at this scale are going to be casual users.
Yeah, I Barstool Games, at least the settlement part to it, was born out of me prior to Sim Settlements. Barstool Games. Just to clarify for the audience, Barstool Games did not come out prior to. I don't think it came out prior to Sim Settlements.
No, it came out after, because I was trying to get you guys to make a plot for it immedately, right when you launched.
Right. Yes, that's right. Right. So it came out afterwards, but we were so busy working on it, hadn't really played with Sim Settlements. So before I knew that Sim Settlements was a thing, Barstool Games, the settlement incorporation of the mini game was born out of me realizing that I spent so much time in these settlements building them and interacting with whatever was going on there, crafting, etc. And then just feeling like I never spent too much time actually in the place that I had crafted or built some like a small town. So it's like, well, a great way to spend time would be to use these mini games in the settlements. And
well,
so
especially
was,
with time passing, like that could be awesome with some settlements. It's like, oh, I want this thing to upgrade. I don't feel like sleeping. I want to immersively do this, and you play a few hands of black. You know, like I know I've watched some people who do this, where they won't pass time in a chair. They want the time. You know, they'll go to sleep at night, but they want the time scale. You know, they want to live through the time scale, and so like they'll play with a lower time scale, and like that would be, you know, like I want to hang out and pass a couple of actual hours or close as the time scale allows. I think the safest you can take the time scale down to is like 5, which the time scale means that's how many, what does that work out to? It's like every 1 minute, that's how many that's how many minutes in the game pass. So by default, it's 1 to 20. So it's every 20. Minute in real life, 20 minutes passes in the game world. So like you can play it safely at 5, I believe, which is 5 minutes in the game world pass. So 4 times slower.
Slow.
Yeah, it's very slow. But I know there are a lot of people who play like that because those people have also asked me if I could make an option for realistic build times to last longer. So total masochists.
That wasn't realistic enough for that? Oh, gosh. Jeez.
But anyway, I think
hopefully that.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Yeah, I could see that. I could see that be a fun way for them to pass some time in that when they're trying to get totally immersed.
I meant for you. Hopefully that happens for you in your playthrough.
Yeah,
I'm hoping it does.
I mean, I will definitely
come out and
once. Now, I in my Let's Play, I definitely in the episode that will go out. So like the timing of all this is gonna be weird for anybody listening. Like. For example, like this podcast might go out after I've already spoken to some people from some of the other teams you're involved, and then like they might reference each other. The conversations might reference each other in the wrong order.
Get a little weird.
Get a little weird that way. So like I think the episode that's going out the week of June 3rd, I definitely set up your plot to be built in my settlement, but I didn't have enough people to manage it. So like it's. It'll happen eventually, and then I'll sit down and play some games because I want to, just want to show it off on cam because it's pretty damn impressive that it works. Like getting a card.
Well, thank you. I am. Well, yeah, I appreciate it. I'm gonna cringe a little bit because I haven't found the voice. Well, the voices yet. It's not yet. The voice actors yet aren't yet done for the settlers because those are you need more voices.
I think people will get over that. I found yesterday. I totally forgot that we had this problem. The Power Armor store, which is a custom store type in some settlements, I totally forgot to put voices in there. Mm-hmm. All of them are they're just blank. So people have already seen that from me. They're not gonna give you any crap about it. But yeah, I totally and I added it back to my list of like, I forgot to do that. It was one of those things where when we were getting down to the 0 hour of Rise of the Commonwealth's release, that was one of those things that kept getting bumped down. I'm like, that's not that important. It's not that important. And then it got to the point where I was like, I just threw away that list because I'm like, I don't have time for it anymore.
That's funny. I can sort of visualize you having that just stress release. If I'm done, I need to get rid of this.
Oh yeah, that has to happen with every expansion. Is there's like a list of things we had when we started with, where we get down to like the final month, and I'm like, we can sacrifice that, like all, especially because I always plan to do post-launch content. It's like that's good post-launch, that's good post-launch. Mm-hmm. And that one was that's good post-launch, but I threw away the note, so it just became non-content.
The fatal flaw.
Yeah. But anyway, I think a solution for us framework makers, like Barstool Games, like Workshop Framework, I think is going to be mod packs. What are your thoughts on mod packs? Are you pro? Are you against? Are you in the middle?
Oh, I'm very pro, and even though it may put me out of a job, I'm very pro.
I should have guessed that because you open sourced your mod and said go ahead and include this whole thing. So like. You don't do that if you're worried a lot about getting credit.
Exactly, and also that is a big thing. But also, on the YouTube side of things, when I was wanting to learn more about Fallout 4 modding, and I was watching all of these YouTubers review mods, and then I go to actually install some of these mods they're reviewing, and I was like, hold on. There is so much more to this story of how to install mods than they're telling. They didn't mention, no YouTuber that I have seen has ever mentioned, by the way, you need to make sure you have this mod installed, and there are these requirements. You need to do this and that and the other, and you need to worry about this for compatibility and blah blah blah. And you need the script extender. I've never heard anybody mention that. Rarely, and so I was like, there's a whole like problem here. Like I can't work with this because they're reviewing this stuff and I want it, and then I can't go get it because XYZ requirement. And so I started a YouTube series specifically with the idea of basically building a mod pack of if you follow the YouTube, the playlist, it does everything. I'm not suggesting you do this. It does everything that you would want to set up like a good idea, or at least my vision for a really good immersively modded game, a lore-friendly, immersion-focused stuff that really draws you into your character, and it takes you through everything. Right. Everything from actually setting up all the settings in the game, and so it's basically a playlist for a mod pack. So to have the idea of being able to actually not have to do any of that effort that I did, and
just one
just install it.
I think the other problem with the way we have mod packs, doing air quotes, right now, because there's a few of them out there that are basically mod lists people keep up, and they tell you all the different config settings and which mods you install and what order the load order should be in. The problem with that is that data becomes obsolete almost immediately, because somebody inevitably is going to delete a file, or they're going to change the versions, and then all of a sudden the documentation's not accurate anymore, and you have no control over that. Like your video series probably was good for a week, and then somebody did something in the mod community that made it so a certain step's not going to work exactly how you put it out there, and that's going to be frustrating for people. Absolutely. And it already takes, to follow some of these, like to follow like the ultimate Skyrim guide takes a long time. It's like a several-hour process to get your whole mod order set up, because you're not only having to download each file individually, but then you've got to go do all the configuration for them and lay them out, make sure you do each of the faux mod installers correctly. Like, it's a big pain in the ass. And that's even for somebody who mods like crazy. Like I don't even want to deal with that. Yeah. I don't even want to deal with a lot of the installers I get presented for my Fallout 4 Let's Play. Like, because I spend so much time modding, I'm kind of lazy as a player now. So like I totally get why people don't want to RTFM, because it's like it's too much work. I just want to play the game, and that's like mod packs can solve all that. So I'm very, very, very pro them. I know it's going to be a problem for tons of reasons. For giving people credit, I could see it being a problem for some settlements in that we have so many version updates that, like, are we sure all these mod packs are going to keep up to date? Are they going to be coming at us? People are going to be coming at us with bugs because they're not using the latest version thanks to a mod pack. Like, there are going to be logistical disasters. But man, from being able as a player, they seem incredible. And then as a mod author, I see them as kind of a necessity, because there's so many more people playing with mods that they could help with customer service. Is like all of a sudden the mod pack author has to deal with the troubleshooting, and then they can come to me with their problems, but I'm not. If I can basically have a standing thing on my forum that's just like, if you're using a mod pack, please go to the mod pack author for your problems, and they'll come to me, and then I can have like a layer. They almost get a customer service guy out in front.
Oh man, I love the idea of mod pack people being yelled at with all the complaints that mod authors get. Oh, that's so funny. Just get the idea of your mod is broken, like this is a terrible mod, no one downloaded it, and it's like, you didn't activate the plugin.
but I think like things like Barstool Games would thrive in that environment, because you just need to convince the popular mod pack authors to put yours in there. You just show them it's bug free, it works well, the framework's there, and then as soon as
bribe them,
whatever you got to do, and then that'll give other people who are fans the incentive to put in that effort, knowing that like, okay, well, I know tens of thousands of people use this mod pack and it works, like that they probably all have this thing, so I can bank on it being there. And I think the same thing would be the case for multiple frameworks of like. For example, there are some great frameworks out there. There's things like AWKCR. Obviously, I think Workshop Framework is great. And there are things like Knockout Framework. Like, there's these great frameworks, and oftentimes it would be awesome to use multiple of them, but that's almost like spelling. Like, you almost might as well not release your mod, because as soon as people see that you've got 2 or 3 frameworks required, get out of here. But if they're all in the most popular mod packs, and there's a huge user base for these mod packs, then it doesn't feel so far-fetched to actually make use of those frameworks. So I think that could be like one of the unintended side benefits of having mod packs around.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's definitely something that we maybe get to look forward to in the future Bethesda single player stuff. Yeah, hopefully that's the case. Briefly, if I may, tangent
Sure.
wildly. I don't want to tangent too wildly, but I realize that you pretty much only know me as a mod author from Barstool Games. I would say. But I mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I assumed you had done other stuff before, because you know like a lot of random things. Like, you know how to do a lot of random stuff in there that I had. I don't know where else you would have learned it other than experimenting yourself. Anyway.
Right. Yeah. So the mod, I would say, that put me more or less on the map in the sense that it went to hot files and was pretty popular, and people started to recognize my name places a little bit briefly in like the very tight circle of this community. Maybe a little bit of recognition was a mod called Enter the Brotherhood, and the reason that I liked it so much, and I'm bringing it up, is because I think it has the same, not impact, but it has the same sort of sense of change in how you see your gameplay as salvage beacons in a similar manner. What Enter the Brotherhood does is, if you recall, when you're playing, I heard you talk about it. You played through the Brotherhood of Steel questline, and you thought it was broken, but it wasn't.
Oh yeah, I've played through. I thought the part about where one of the Proctor guys, I can't remember the character name, but he tells you to go take over.
Oh, Tegan.
Tegan, thank you. He tells you to go take him or the guy, the armory guy. I can't remember the names of all these characters.
Tegan.
He tells you to go take Nordhagen Beach at some point.
Yeah,
and then
right.
I thought the whole settlement system was broken. But yeah, anyway. Okay.
Gotcha. And actually, now that I realize it, it's not even a Brotherhood of Steel thing, but it's when after, spoiler for Fallout 4, I guess, after you kill Kellogg, you leave Fort Hagen out of that roof entrance or roof exit, and then the Pridwin flies in,
which is such a magical moment. Just loved that. I love that they did
right.
that.
So what if I told you that I made a mod that when the Pridwin will now enter the game, not in that scripted sequence, not after you kill Kellogg and leave. I hate that. I don't think that's a good design. They made it such that even if you had never met the Brotherhood of Steel before, that when you leave that, they show up regardless, even if you had never met Dance. Most people do, but if you never had, they still would, which is doesn't make any sense. Because if you recall, the Brotherhood start is they need to find the transmitter so they can reach the Capital Wasteland to let the people know that they found the Institute or whatever, and to bring the Brotherhood to Boston. That's like the whole reason that you start out with Dance. Anyway, what I did was create a mod that after you complete that introductory mission with Dance, you remember where you go into ArcJet and you turn on the big jet engine and it like burns all the synths? Okay. So after you do that mission, regardless of how you end the conversation with him, after you complete that mission, a timer starts, and I don't want to spoil the mod, I guess, but a very generous amount of time after that timer starts, the Pridwin will fly in regardless of where you are, as long as you're in the Commonwealth world space.
Yeah, you're not the only, someone else did that mod, because I've actually researched this because we were trying for some of the story content we're doing, like we needed to know when's the earliest the Brotherhood could show up, and then like I found SKK's mod that does something like that.
Yes. So I did it first. They did it better.
I'm glad you acknowledge that.
Yeah, I did it first. They did it better. I do not recommend that anybody who hears this uses my mod because that you use Enter the Brotherhood, because it works. It's not bugged. As long as you play the game exactly as I intended to play the game. But if you break, you can very easily break that sequence, and then it kind of borks. Given that that if you never did the dance quest, this is why Bethesda did it this way. If you never did the dance quest, the Brotherhood just never shows up in your game with my mod. With SKK's mod, they put in a couple of fail safes and blah, 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 and they did a little bit more advanced detection. At the time, I had no concern for that sort of thing because I was like, this is how I know I'm going to play it, so I'm just going to do it like that, and it works fine.
Have you since like updated your mod page to be like, go download this mod instead?
Yes. Massive text. It's like a first thing it says. But I left it. I thought about taking it down because like it really could just mess up your game. But I left it up there because I actually got a lot of requests from people who preferred to use my mod because they enjoyed that route that I was taking to play the game, which was just that all it is just that as long as you do, I can't even remember, it's on the mod page, but as long as you like do the dance mission before you kill Kellogg, I think it's all fine, or one or the other. Anyway, as long as you just do one before the other, it's all totally fine. But so they just do that anyway, and I think SKK's it doesn't exactly do it on a timer basis or something. I can't quite recall, but people just a lot of people were like really passionate about the way that I did it. I was like, okay, I'll leave it up here, you maniac, but sure.
That was kind of a bummer that they tied that in because it kind of it forces you to go down part of the main quest much further than you would have had to. This is one of those pivotal things. I think that's the difference between Fallout 4 and Skyrim's feel of openness is in Skyrim. After you do the Helgen sequence, you're basically free to do whatever you want, and everything else is independent of the main quest. So like all of the guild quest lines are all independent of the main quest, and like you can basically visit every location. You can go get all the priest masks. Like you can pretty much do everything in that game without finishing the main story. And with Fallout, you're like, to even get access to one of the core factions, you have to go through a pretty good chunk of the main story, and that people were bummed out about that. So I get why. It does make for this amazing cinematic moment when you pop out of there, but I do appreciate the existence of something like that mod that you did, and then SKK's of like, you know what, sometimes I don't want to do the main story, but I would still like the Brotherhood to be around.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I haven't tried SKK's mod, mostly because I'm not really playing Fallout 4 anymore. But I assume it does. I'm assuming it achieves the same end effect. If you haven't tried it out, I recommend that you do. SKK is not mine. Because what was so incredible was the first time that I actually had installed my mod on a playthrough I was doing for YouTube, and I had installed it, so long ago, basically after I finished debugging it and stuff, that I kind of forgot about it, and then I just completely forgot about it until it happened, until I like left Diamond City one day and I heard this low hum in the distance. I was like, what the hell is that? And I'm sitting there and I'm like walking towards the waterfront, going to do whatever the hell it was I was going to do, and then just this shadow just looms over me, and I look up and it's the Pridwin coming over the river, and it's one of those things, since you don't really know when it's going to happen, you could be anywhere, and so you could always see it from a different perspective, and it just it really enhances it, in my opinion.
That's one of those sequences where, like, with I'm hoping at some point in in Super Weevil, this is for you. When at some point in the Conqueror storyline, we have a moment that's as epic as that. I don't know how we're gonna do it, but like I'm up to learning how to script something that epic because that is so cool.
Yeah, I got a little familiar with that. We had to pull some of the same tricks to do the Barstool Game stuff. So let me know.
All right, man. Well, this has been a fantastic conversation. Yeah. I definitely will show off Barstool Games on my Let's Play. So, those of you who haven't tried it out yet, you'll see it soon if you're following my Let's Play. Otherwise, you can check out his mods, and we'll link it below. I'll probably just link to all of your files since you obviously have more than one mod. Is there anything else you want to pimp out before we end the podcast?
Yeah, I want to definitely, I love Fallout 4 New Vegas, definitely want to pimp them out. I don't know enough to make this claim, but I know for a fact that Fallout Cascadia and Fallout Miami are both two amazing projects. You can Google them if you want to learn more about them, but more importantly, if you have any sort of talent or desire to learn more about modding and stuff like that, Cascadia and Miami are both recruiting for a bunch of different positions. Voice actors, both just send out some casting calls for voice actors. Miami is looking for level designers, and and Cascadia is not looking for level designers at the moment, but Miami is looking out for level designers, and also they're taking people who don't know exactly how to do level design in the creation kit, but if maybe you've had some experience messing around with like level editors for other games, or like even like the old Far Cry games where you could build levels in those, if you have any sort of will and desire to learn about how to build levels in the creation kit, the Miami team is willing to recruit you and teach you how to do level design, and you can build levels with Fallout Miami. So they both those projects are recruiting. So please, if you're interested in that, definitely give it a Google and hit us up.
All right, thanks, man.